So how does artificial intelligence fit into your philosophy of disruption? Is it a tool? Is it a threat? Is it a mirror? Is it an amplifier? And what brilliant strategies can leaders or leadership in this age and time, adopt using artificial intelligence to achieve progress for their teams, their organizations, and of course, in their personal lives?
Okay. Before we dive back into today's conversation, I want to share something important. This episode includes a paid partnership with BetterHelp, a platform designed to make starting therapy easier. I know from my own journey as a leader and entrepreneur that life can sometimes feel overwhelming. There are seasons where stress and pressure build up, and you need a safe space to process it all. That's where therapy comes in. Therapy isn't only for people facing clinical challenges. It's a space to reflect, grow, and find better ways to manage stress, relationships, and personal goals. It takes courage to seek help, but it's also one of the smartest investments you can make in your mental and emotional well-being. That's why I'm proud to highlight BetterHelp. With BetterHelp, you simply fill out a short questionnaire and get matched with a credentialed therapist in just a couple of days. If the first match doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch therapists at no extra cost until you find someone who truly connects with you. Inside the platform, you'll also find tools like journaling and group sessions on different topics that can support your growth. And with over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 Trustpilot rating, BetterHelp is a platform you can rely on. So if you feel like you'd benefit from talking to a therapist, visit betterhelp.com/King Dems. That's betterhelp.com/King Dems to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Once again, this is a paid partnership with BetterHelp, and I encourage you to take that first step if you've been thinking about it. Sometimes the best investment you can make is in yourself.
Welcome to the King Dems Podcast, where we share the stories of extraordinary people and dissect hot, relevant topics that shape our world. From visionary leaders to trailblazing creatives, we uncover the mindset, strategy, and grit behind greatness. Whether it's business, culture, or personal growth, we ask the real questions. This isn't just conversation, it's transformation. The King Dems Podcast. Your next breakthrough starts here.
Music licensing reimagined.
We are live, ladies and gentlemen. You once again welcome to the King Dems Podcast and Diary of the CFO. And today, champions, welcome back. If you caught our first conversation with Ted Santos, you know he is not your typical strategist. He's a leadership disruptor who believes the key to growth lies in creating problems intentionally. Today, we dive even deeper into the disruptive leadership model, how it transforms CEOs, reshapes company culture, and sparks exponential breakthroughs. Buckle up. This episode will challenge how you think about leadership forever. Let's get ready to rumble! Introduce him first. Fighting out of the blue corner, a leadership coach with multiple years of experience. His name is the one, the only, Teddy Pendergrass Santos. And introducing out of the red corner, my co-host, the world best sales and marketing expert in the world, Noel. Let us go. I'll give it over to the co-host.
Ted, thanks so much for joining us again on another episode. Your first episode was incredible, talking about paradigm shifting for entire businesses. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, is just such a monumental skill and such an essential part of leadership through any type of corporate business. But even as individuals, it's something that we all need to take to heart and bring into our daily practice when it comes to the stories that we're telling ourselves. So you really practice breaking apart the science of creating problems. You've said if a CEO isn't creating problems, that they should be retrained. And you specifically talk about the ability of CEOs to create problems and create chaos in their businesses in order to move through these paradigms. That's a very, very bold take. And we are so excited to dive in with you. What kind of problems should leaders be creating, and how I know you've mentioned in your last episode that they shouldn't be avoiding chaos and that it's actually about running straight through it. Does that involve that chaos turning destructive, or is it about alchemizing it into another way? Kind of two questions there for you.
So you said the nice version. First, thanks for inviting me back. It's my pleasure to be here a second time. It's an honor, so thank you. And for two, yes, I said if your CEO is not creating problems, they should be retrained, but I also said they should be fired or retrained. Since most breakthrough initiatives fail in organizations, there's a good chance they fail because they become chaotic. And people are not trained to be able to navigate or manage themselves in the face of chaos. So the punchline in the last video was chaos is not chaos. It's how you see yourself and how you see what's occurring. So something happens and your interpretation is this is chaos and I need to get away from it. And that's when it becomes destructive. It becomes something you want to get away from. So we've talked about Steve Jobs and how I'll give a different example. There's a story of Steve Jobs going to Xerox PARC and he comes back to Apple and he goes to his head of product development and says, look, I want you to make me a device and it should have this kind of functionality. It should be about this size and I need this, done soon. So he walks into a guy's office and makes this request. And I saw the interview and the guy says the first thing he thought was, what was Steve smoking today? He must be high. He's asking me to do something that makes no sense. And he said after he had that whole conversation with himself, the next thing he said is, well, I have a job. I guess I better get to work. So he went to a drugstore and he started looking for things that would help him create what fulfill Steve's request. Do you guys have any idea what that innovation, what the item was that Steve Jobs asked him to make?
No idea.
Maybe to
I
maybe
think
to put a phone or put a computer into a phone, possibly?
No, no, it was this.
The wireless mouse?
Not wireless. It was the first mouse. It was made of
Cool.
wood. So the guy, had no idea. So the Xerox, they had a division called Xerox PARC, which was responsible for many innovations, and they just didn't know how to market it. So Steve Jobs went there, took a tour, came back, and he couldn't show the guy the mouse. He had to abstractly describe it and say, I want it to have this kind of functionality. And the guy had to take that abstraction and then turn it into something physical. And so it was that he basically created a problem. And as the guy in the interview is saying, his first thought was Steve Jobs must be high, like he must have smoked some great stuff. So this can happen in your organization when you create problems that people are like, oh, you're asking me to do something that makes no sense. Maybe you're high. This is a stupid idea. No one's ever done it. And I've even seen it with employees saying, why are you asking me to do this? This makes no sense. And then after this guy finishes, he's got the first mouse for Apple and it was made of wood. And Steve Jobs didn't want it to do exactly what Xerox did. So it had no right and left click. I think it just had one like we still see today. So this is one of the challenges that people have to deal with. So in the case of Apple, the guy was able to, after he finished criticizing and doubting this being a good idea, he went and did his job and it was a successful start. He actually put them on the path of creating a mouse. So this is what happens so often. And if you as the leader, if you're having those conversations with yourself and saying, wow, this is a crazy idea. I don't think I'm ready. My people are not ready. I don't think it's the right time. How are we going to do it? If you're just stuck with all these questions, then it will never launch. Just like sending a man to the moon. If we just thought it was a stupid idea, we would have never launched a rocket into space. Nothing. So that's one of the things. So sometimes these ideas seem crazy initially, but when they're done, then it's like, wow, a computer mouse is just a common. No one even thinks about it being a big deal, but it was a big deal on that day until it was done. And so if you're stuck with these limiting beliefs, then it can be chaos that crashes and burns and nothing comes out of it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's so funny how many inventions that we don't think about because they're so common now in our world right now that we don't understand how big of a deal it was or what type of crack we think someone was smoking when they came up with an idea. And it's wild right now. And I think that's a really amazing insight for a lot of leaders, entrepreneurs, and a lot of people that tune into our audience because right now, even moving through generative AI, we're kind of at the beginning of it being public knowledge and public information and us really building these systems that can be world impacting and world changing. A lot of them probably have similar ideas that seem so insane with something so simple. So I think that's just such a great insight. Are there any notes you happen to have on this type of structure that include anything like strategic tension or this kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but controlled disruption or growth catalysts kind of through this process? I know that we're speaking about chaos, which sounds like something very uncontrolled, but is there some part of your system when you're working with these teams that you do it in a controlled manner?
So when you're looking to create breakthroughs, which can a lot of times be a paradigm shift,
Mm-hmm.
using the old paradigm to understand the new paradigm could create a lot of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it sounds crazy and doesn't make sense. I say control is a myth. It doesn't even make sense to talk about trying to control anything because people can't even control what they think. Like if I were to say think nothing right now, whether it's the two of you or someone listening, to be able to just think nothing, like turning off a light switch without seeing pictures, without hearing words, nothing. There are very few people who will do that very well, which there you go. That shows you can't even control what you think. So why are you trying to control anything else? So how do you manage yourself in the face of when things are not going the way you want them to go and not being stuck with, I think we may have talked about identity. So people have an identity and that identity really informs you about what you can and cannot think. Like people like me don't think like that. We don't speak that way. We don't do things like that. And that you end up pigeonholing yourself, which then creates all these blind spots and limiting beliefs that seem like reality, except that was an identity that even existed before you were born, and you're living like it's the fact of life,
Mm-hmm.
and you have no way out of it. So there becomes this automatic. I hate to say this. It's like human beings respond like robots. There's this certain thing that occurs like a stimulus, and you have this automatic response. Like there are certain words that you can say to people depending on what country you're in, what culture, and they have an automatic response. Like they don't even really know why they respond that way, but that's what was given to them. You're supposed to respond to that this way. In my book, even though my book is technically not about business, I give a scenario in the book and I ask, there are women who are basically interviewing me, and I ask if you've been in a relationship for 2 years and everything is going well, and the guy comes home and he has a dozen roses and he opens a little box that has a 2-carat emerald shaped diamond ring in it. It's flawless. How are you going to feel? You're going to be upset. You're going to be angry. Like, how would you feel, Noella, if the guy you've been seeing for 2 years comes home, dozen roses, little box he opens, and a nice, shiny 2-carat emerald shaped diamond ring? It's beautiful and it's
Happy.
for you. Right. Well, okay. So now here's the question. If he comes home with a dozen dandelions and he gets a rock in a yard about the size of a 2-carat ring and he wraps it in some metal and opens the box and presents it to you, how are you going to feel?
Offended,
Okay. Now,
which is actually a really good example because that's,
in both cases, he presented flowers and a rock.
mm-hmm.
And one, you're happy, and the other one, you're offended. Why?
uh,
Like, who told you you should be offended or
right.
happy?
Strictly due to the associations based off of the labeling that we subscribe to associated with proposals, engagement, and romance.
And we build an entire identity around that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're locked in, and nothing can exist outside of that. You,
Right.
a dozen dandelions? Like, I don't want that. A rock in the yard? Go away. You don't love me.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it's really like a machine. It's an automatic response.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. We actually had a conversation in AI earlier. We actually had an extensive conversation about kind of about identity and kind of about labeling. But it reminds me of just when you're speaking about identities and how we just assume automatic nature or automatic actions or maybe workflows or schedules or really anything based off the labels that we put on ourselves. I'm a mother, so it just reminded me immediately of even just the term of mother and like what we assume that means, which a lot of times is overworking, exhaustion, self neglect, things like that. And those are natural, like women naturally take on those types of traits just based off of the label and the assumption. So amazing, amazing insights for sure. And when it comes to relationships, like we've mentioned before, even though your book isn't necessarily just about business, we are the extent of our relationships. And the
Right.
identities we put on ourselves, they go far beyond just the relationships we hold with each other. They flood into our work life as well. And we are essentially made up of the people we spend the most time with. So I think it integrates quite perfectly. I think what we want to talk about next is the psychology of disruption. I think
Okay.
AI is going to go into that with us.
So I'll address that, but I want to address something you said. You said being a mother and burnout. It's because the prevailing conversation in society is how people they're so burnt out, and that was the word after COVID. People are burnt out. If you listen to what you said, there is this conversation that people, both men and women especially, are listening to that says, as a mother, if I do all these things, I'm going to be burnt out. And what do you think happens if you keep telling yourself you're going to be burnt out? And so I'm saying that happens in the workforce.
Hmm.
We give people license and permission to be burnt out, even though they're not, but it's almost like we're marketing burnout. We're marketing it to mothers, we're marketing it to people in the business world. And now people can justify and say, well, I'm only human. But see, we're going back to an identity. People don't create their identity, they're given their identity and they accept it. So, it's interesting how I've said to you, I lived in the Belize in the jungle with Mayan Indians, no electricity or running water. And you can see how the conversations in the village with 329 people creates one kind of identity. But it's those people are not exposed to some of the conversations that exist in New York City. But if someone from New York goes there and introduces those conversations, and I saw that happen, one of the daughters in the family I stayed with, she said, "Oh, I went to live in New York because everyone in New York is rich." And she believed that. So she'll go to New York and expect to be rich. I don't know the basis, but there's this automatic conversation. And she would have this identity based around New York, but living where she lived, she thought it was horrible and terrible. And there are probably lots of people in New York who would love to live in clean air and clean water and, all that stuff. They work hard to become really rich so they can buy a place where she lives, right?
Right.
She's trying to go to New York to become rich. Um, so so I'm saying that burnout is really given to people. It becomes part of an identity. It's a part of a mother's identity. If I do all these things, I'm burnt out. But then you see people working on something like look at a professional athlete. You rarely hear about athletes burning out. In our
Hmm.
last video, I talked about Usain Bolt training so hard he vomited. The same with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He won Mr. Universe 7 times. And you didn't hear him saying, man, I don't think I'm going to be winning this year because I'm burnt out. I've been training so hard, I vomit. The guy wins. So part of what I want people to understand is how you manage yourself in chaos is correlated with these automatic conversations, these automatic limiting beliefs of already knowing if something is good or bad before, like knowing that the diamond is better than the rock from the yard.
And
You already know it before it even is presented. And so
right.
people know they're going to be burnt out before they're even burnt out. And then they can justify why they quit and say, well, I'm only human. And that's one of the best justifications. I'm only human. What do you want from me? And so that's what can happen in the face of chaos. So Now you're asking me about AI. That can be a big conversation.
I am
And I think
AI.
I just want to mention one more thing. I actually want to expand a little bit because the conversation me and Ademola had earlier in private was primarily around the fact that most people cannot control their thoughts. And when you're speaking about how we take these assumptions automatically, it's really interesting just how all day, every day, whether it's in our culture, at work, at school, on the train, on the bus, wherever we're at, or on social media, especially on social media, we're constantly bombarded with thousands of pieces of stimuli that we automatically agree to. So it's almost like every piece of stimuli is an opportunity for us to agree with something and put it on our identity subconsciously, even if we don't realize it. So by the time we get to the point where we're pigeonholed ourselves into
Right.
something like, for example, the identity of the single mother, or example, the identity of the burnt out CEO, it's almost like tunnel vision. There's this tunnel vision. We can't really see outside of those identities. So just kind of connecting something we talked about earlier, because I just find it so relevant in this conversation. And it's incredibly important because, like we're talking about paradigm shifting, we're basically talking about not knowing what we don't know.
Right.
And when we're constantly making these thousands upon thousands of subconscious agreements throughout our life, within our culture, through our family, friends, teachers, anything about ourselves, about our identity, how are we supposed to align? Or, like you say, we can't even have a how for this because we've already pigeonholed ourselves into whatever labels that we want to put on ourselves. So I think psychology of disruption, I think Ademola is going to take that over and kind of go into the next segment.
Okay.
Teddy nuts, Teddy Pendergrass. All right. I have a couple of things to tell you. I have a surprise for you, anyways. But before I let the cat out of the bag, I need to tell you that
Okay.
I am actually burnt out. I am burnt out by the story you told about New York. I don't know who told that lady about New York. Is it the same New York that I know? The New York with the rats at the train station. You speak about controlling chaos. I was doing a very hard job controlling the chaos in my head. I,
That's a good way to put it. Right.
I
Right.
don't know what
Go
New
ahead.
York you guys are talking about. I love America. Americans, please don't come for me, but New York is not it.
Well, there are quite a few wealthy people in New York. There are.
There are many, like when you talk about clean environment, I know, I don't think, I don't
Right.
think so.
Right.
I don't think so for the common person. Maybe I need to know about a New York. Maybe there's a newer York, but the New York that I know is not what that person was sold. They were sold a dream, and it's crazy how people have like certain
Right.
narratives of certain places in their heads. And yes, same thing as well. Like I come from Africa, and coming to the United Kingdom, I met a lot of people who have a very crazy false narrative about Africa, and I'm like, "Oh, where are you talking about?" Like a very big part of
Right.
education is traveling. You need to see places for yourself to know what they really look like. And yeah, a lot of people just think about the popular places. For example, I traveled to Lithuania and I saw a different narrative from what is being painted like in the Western world. Like really amazing people. Even places like Morocco as well. I went immediately after the earthquake, that happened there, and there was a bit of a political unrest. But the image that the press were painting to the world was that, oh, it's a very dangerous place. You can get killed. Well, I did not get killed anyways. Moving on from that, so I was just
Right.
going to, talk on that. Like people think narratives until you get into that physical zone. And I think you are a person that can speak more about that. You've been in Costa Rica, you've been in a lot of these places, right? But there was something, and I think I did discuss this in private with Noella. It's crazy how the people with the least resources, monetary wise, tend to have the most, would I say, value in terms of happiness, pure happiness, and they tend to have a better quality of life, right? So I think you are the best person to speak to that. Why is that? Less money, more happiness, better quality of life. But with more money, you're buying less with more in the Western world.
I would have to see statistics on that. I don't know if that's a fact. Not sure where you found that.
That is from my own personal research, right? That's what I've been able to observe, right? And I think you should have been able to observe that, right? You see, these communities, right? They're able to would I say, regulate, unlike advanced communities where you spend a lot on the police, you spend a lot on the armed forces, yet you still have chaos. You still
Right.
have, yeah. So what's happening in the world?
So, boy, this may be disruptive, what I'm going to say.
I love disruption.
Good. So when I meet people who say they just want to be happy, I see them as people with no ambition.
Mm,
Why would happiness be something you're chasing in life? Why would you think that happiness is going to come from your environment, whether it's a clean environment or whether it's a real jungle or a concrete jungle? Like none of that has anything to do with happiness. So what I like is the Greeks have this word called eudaimonia, and it's spelled Eudaimonia, eudaimonia. And it seemed the ancient Greeks had a better handle on life because they didn't see chasing happiness as being worth anything. What they thought was eudaimonia was the state to pursue. And eudaimonia is the result of taking on something that was difficult, had some obstacles, and it took something to accomplish it. And when you accomplish it, that sensation of accomplishment is what they call eudaimonia. A lot of people, if you Google eudaimonia, you'll think it's synonymous with happiness, and it really isn't. Because this may be one reason why you have so many people that turn to alcohol or substance looking for happiness, because you can get a dopamine hit from alcohol or heroin or something else to actually accomplish something and have the sense of accomplishment and all the things that come with it. It could be new skills, maybe you met new people. There are all kinds of things that benefit you from accomplishing something that was beyond just tying your shoe. So yeah, eudaimonia is I would say would be much more valuable, except we do live in a society where people are measuring quality of life based on happiness. And you can literally tell your brain, I'm happy by doing the following. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And you will be happy.
Exactly. Yeah.
You will be just by saying, I'm so happy.
Mhm.
But you didn't accomplish anything. You can do that at any time. So why would someone be pursuing, "I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy"?
I think I love your what I say the way you explained it. And one very important thing is happiness is actually free. You can get it in any way you you deem fit, right? You can be happy by just saying, I am happy. So you see, you walk into poor communities, for example, and you see these people are celebrating. They are like really happy. They're throwing a party, right? I saw somewhere in Brazil, it was a muddied pool. And, these Brazilians were celebrating, taking alcohol and playing football in the swamp. And it clicked in my brain like, these people are happy even though they are in like deteriorated conditions. So like it's just a function of the mindset, right? And that's a great way to segue into what I was going to ask you. That is the psychology of disruption. Like how does the mindset condition and play into a leader's ability to disrupt their own systems before external forces do that?
Well, I would actually look at it from an ontological approach, not a psychological.
Let's have it.
Well, ontology is the study of being.
Mhm.
So you can do things and say, I'm happy doing that, but who are you being? So there's a correlation with your language. If you can really get to know people by listening to their language. And people language happiness. And it's not always based on they're doing these things and they're so happy even though they are poor. And if you listen to their language, you may find that they're not as happy as you think just because they're laughing and joking with those things. And then you go, and I've dined with billionaires, and that's not an exaggeration. To assume that money is some path to unhappiness is that's more pop culture. So pop culture promotes a lot and people buy it. So there's a correlation between the language, how you language and express yourself in the world, and who you're being. So let's just throw happiness off the table for a second and look at high performance. And we spoke about this in the last video. You can distinguish a high performer in any profession through their language, especially when they are faced with a breakdown, when things don't go the way they want. Watch them. Watch how they language. Now, a lot of high performers will not be able to necessarily tell you how they do that. That's why when someone writes a book on how to be a high performer in a sport, the person reading it never becomes that person because there's a part of it that they don't really always know how to tell you and give you access to. So who they are being, they don't really know how to give you that. You can emulate LeBron James and Michael Jordan, but their mindset and the language that they created to become who they are, that's the part most people don't have. They don't have access to that. And the high performer doesn't always know how to give you access to that.
I love that. I remember an ex-colleague of mine called me a few months ago and asked me, please, you need to give me a master class on how to be consistent on your goals because they studied my body of work and said, oh, you've been doing podcasting for 2 years now, and I admire how consistent you have been. You seem to be so passionate about this thing, and I watch you every week without fail release an episode except from 2 weeks in January when you went off and went to rebrand. I'm like, oh wow, interesting. So the world takes notes. They see the timestamps. But back to your point, how do you teach being consistent? I couldn't do that master class because how do I teach a person to be consistent at something they pick to do? It's just
So offline,
I don't know.
the three of us spoke. Yeah, the three of us spoke about something, and I'll give a real case study of a person and how that happened. So I had a client, a guy who was about 62 years old, CPA by profession. That's where he started. He worked for Price Waterhouse
Y'all is attacking my
and
profession.
decided to do a yes. He was 62, so this is 20 years ago, yeah. And he decided to make a career change. He went into the mortgage industry and he was doing okay, and then he hit a slump and he couldn't get out of it. Every day he went to work expecting to be fired. And when he came to me, he worked with me, and the the outcome was in the first 3 months of working with me, he doubled his productivity, and then in the subsequent 3 months, he doubled that. So if he came to me doing 2 units of productivity, he was doing 4 in 3 months, and then he was doing 8 after 6 months. So why was this guy in a rut and couldn't get out? What this guy was good at was he was great at breaking the ice. So he could get meetings with people he called heavy hitters. They were investors, and he would make a joke, everyone would laugh, they were comfortable. He'd make a second joke and they laughed and they're comfortable. And then, everyone's sort of ready to do business. And he talks a little business and then he makes another joke and another joke. And everyone really likes him and they're ready to go out and have a beer with him later on. They're not doing a deal with him. He joked his way out of a deal and he couldn't understand why he wasn't closing deals. So, um, and in my mindset technology, there are questions that I ask to uncover the saboteur behavior. And what we discovered was when he was 13, he was in a car with guys who were like 17 and 18. And one of the guys turned around, looked at him and said, "What's this little kid doing with us?" And he made a joke and everyone laughed. They put their arm around him and said, "Yo, you're cool. You can be with us." So when he failed to be, you could say in his mind, he failed to be worthy of being in the company of those young guys. He overcompensated by making a joke. The way he survived that situation and not get kicked out of the car was to make a joke and everyone laughed. Now from 13 and here he is 62, still using the same strategy, which it's not a bad thing. You don't want to throw it away, but it also, at some point, it would sabotage him because that was the only gear he had. So when he gets into this conversation with self as to whether he belongs or not, he still used the same system he used at 13 because it worked. He has proof it worked, and he's now stuck with it. And he was already aware that situation happened. So being aware doesn't help you. He had to be able to distinguish what he said to himself in that moment that someone asked, why is he with us? And his lack of belonging, that's the conversation. So now when you put him in front of heavy hitters, he now is able to distinguish when that conversation comes back. So what we did is we worked on him distinguishing that. So now he's no longer stuck with it because he thought that's just the guy who I am. Now he can see it's not who he is. It's just how he dealt with a moment in time. And then the other part is we worked on selling strategies so that he actually knows what questions to ask to uncover what his prospects need. So then he can deliver on what they need. So he still was an icebreaker, but now he had a whole toolkit for being able to navigate the conversation. And whenever he starts thinking, I don't belong, he now has a way of managing himself so that conversation of not belonging doesn't run the show for him. Before he met me, that was running the show for him. So that's you could say that he had an identity that was, it was made at part of it is at 13, that different things happen at different times in our lives that will shape and mold an identity. And it was based on an assumption that he didn't belong in a whole story that he made up about how he doesn't belong around certain people. And the way he survives in that conversation is to be the funny guy.
So how do you unlock that beast inside of you? Yeah, you're aware. It's not just enough to be aware, but you also need that mental flexibility, to condition your mind to embrace change, to embrace uncertainty. How do you unlock that beast inside of you to become El Matador? Right.
So in that case, the gentleman had no distinctions for the conversations he was having with himself that derailed him. And people have those. Look, at the age of 3, most children, they say around 3, they will have the ambition to want to help a parent. It could be a boy seeing his dad fixing a car and he comes out, picks up a screwdriver and comes up like, I want to help. In another real story, there was a woman I know. She was adopted from South America. She was brought up to New York. She's 4 years old, and her parents, they have the means to take great care of her. So she's in this good household, and they eat dinner. And this little girl is 4 years old, pulls a chair up to the sink and starts washing dishes. And her adopted mom said, "Oh, honey, you're going to get hurt. Don't do that." So as a 3 or 4 year old, the interpretation, the conversation that child could make is, I cannot work. I have nothing to contribute. And they say, okay. And then around 8, when you ask them to start doing chores, they're now in conflict with themselves because at 4, she was told she couldn't help. She couldn't contribute. She cannot work. That's the 4-year-old interpretation. Now, when she goes off to college and has to get a job, she's in conflict because since she was 4, she believed she couldn't work. And she just thought that's who she was. So if her mother would have said instead, "Oh, honey, that's so good. You want to help. Let me help you." And if they would have done it together, she would have had a very healthy relationship towards work because she would have seen at 4, I have something to offer. I can contribute. I can work. But that's not what happened. So now she's stuck and she tries to open businesses. It doesn't work because working is hard for her because she's in conflict with herself. So you want to release the beast. Before you can do that, the beast is chained by this entire network of conversations that tell you what you can and cannot do. And at a young age, you interpreted a situation that, like the guy, the CPA that told you when you belong and when you don't belong and how to deal with it because you did something that worked. And the woman who was 4 was told not to help because, in her interpretation, is I have nothing to offer. So until you address those are the blind spots. All you're going to do is end up putting icing on a mud pie, and you're trying to force it. So the woman who was told to not help at 4, she worked for some great companies. She tried to start businesses. She was trying to force it, and she just couldn't do it until we were able. Like now, she has a successful retail store doing things that she really likes doing. But before that, she had no distinctions. That was just an event that happened in her life, and she was aware of it. She had no distinction for how that event shaped her identity.
It's a great way to move to the next thing we have on the agenda. That is proactive disruption. So how do you effect change before the market forces of demand and supply force you to change, right? You talk about how she had to deal with her, would I say, her limitations, her limiting beliefs, right? And of course,
Right.
it's not just about changing. You need to sustain that evolution, right? That is building habits that can help you to be in that perpetual state of transformation. So how do you get into that high level?
Well, in those two cases, those are examples of people discharging baggage. Most people are just trying to run, and that's how you'll end up with someone saying burnout because they're in conflict with themselves. So the first is you want to discharge baggage, and then you start talking about the future that you're committed to creating. In the last video, I asked you about passion and commitment. And when the rubber meets the road, people really do, their power is in commitment, not in passion. So it's committing to something. But also, so when you have distinctions for those blind spots, it makes it easier to go forward because in the past, those conversations, limiting beliefs will derail you. But now that you can distinguish them, you can own them. The way one client put it to me is that before, when he wanted to go down a new street, he would just turn around and go back. But now he can hear the conversation that tells him to turn around and go back, and he can go 1 block and then he can explore that new block. And then as he goes further, he can go down 2 blocks, 3 blocks, and he now can see all these streets that he never knew existed because before he would start and turn around and go back immediately because he already knew what he was good at or not good at, or he didn't belong, or whatever their interpretation is. Well, it depends on what happened when you were young.
It's crazy how these conversations are so enriching and educating, right? Okay, I'll give an open confession. So, for a person like myself, I feel blessed having access to the great minds that exist in my time, minds like yourself and minds like
Mm,
my
thank
co-host
you.
Noella. We had our first episode. I have gone back to listen to it a number of times, and each time it's not like the previous time. There are like new levels of would I say what's the word now? Epiphanies, right? A person when you're speaking with a person
Okay.
of wisdom, right? It's always great to document it. And I love what we used to say in the Big Four, even though you seem to have a thing against those of us who are ex prize water house poopers, right? We say if it was not documented, it was not done. So I'm really grateful that this from me to you. And of course, speaking with Noella as well, like you speak with wise people like this, and sometimes they don't even intend to even give you a nugget. Uh, when you are a person who is, I see myself like a sponge, right? I absorb data, I absorb information. I'm a lifelong student. I'm very, very proud to be a student, and I learn from the people around me. And it baffles me when people are giving information freely and they don't like take it hungrily. But that's a conversation for another day. Your words of wisdom, right? Even intentionally or unintentionally, actually help unlock certain limiting beliefs, right? And I don't know if this happens with the two of you. Sometimes you're listening to something or you're having a conversation and you feel like you've unlocked another level. It feels like a game. When you move from level 8 to level 9, you have that feeling like it's unlocked, right? So right now in this conversation, I felt some unlocking. You've actually unlocked a level. Thank you very much. I'll give it back to Noella.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So I have a couple questions based off of the stories that you've been sharing in your experience. My first question is, when you're working with somebody and they're trying to uncover their childhood memories or whatever age, they could be a teenager, it could be a toddler, is there a specific method you use? Like, I know a lot of people use things like hypnosis or meditation, or they'll have a certain type of practice to relax the person they're working with. Do you use any type of those methods for the teams or the leaders or the business owners that you're working with to get into a state where they're able to remember the
You have to know what questions to ask.
hmm
There's a story of an old guy. He was an engineer in World War II, and they were running this ship from World War II. And the guy, now he's 90 years old. So back in the day when he was young, he worked on a ship. And today, this ship from World War II is having a problem. So there's only one guy in the world who knows how to work on these ships, and they call him. 90-year-old guy comes in, puts his ear on the engine, he listens, and he said, I'll be back. And he comes back with his hammer, with the mallet, and he bangs on the engine, and he says that will be, and he hits the engine, and he says, start it up, and it starts. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. He said that would be $10,000. Like, but took you like less than a minute to fix it. Why should we pay you 10,000? He said, well, it's $9.99 for the hammer, and the other $9,090 is knowing where to hit, and that's what you're paying.
hmm
You're paying for my experience of knowing exactly where to hit, and it worked. I know exactly what to ask.
So
I've heard that story before.
you do it. So it sounds like you do it more through questions and knowing the right questions to ask people, which is amazing. Do you ever come in contact with people who maybe have suppressed memories or memory loss or things like that, to where they can't really pinpoint it? Or does your set of questions that you use and the method that you do, does that ever help uncover repressed memories or things like that to help them pinpoint those moments?
I think only once someone couldn't answer the question. I've never seen people not answer it. I may have said this to the two of you. I remember I met with these two CEOs, both in their 50s, both Ivy League educated. And before we started, I said, what you're going to find out today is the 5-year-old in you is still running your life.
Mm-hmm.
And they laughed at me and said, you know who I am, blah, blah. And about 90 minutes in, they said, oh my God, I don't want the 5-year-old running my life anymore. So it's not that difficult to uncover.
mm-hmm.
I would say that you could have repressed memories, but it might be more of someone being more protective and not wanting to talk about it. But generally, people will talk about it. There have been some sensitive situations that people have discussed.
Mm-hmm.
When it's in a group, it's interesting how that group dynamic will actually pull it out. And sometimes, well, not sometimes, often people will give me a situation and then I'll ask more questions only to discover so now we have to dig.
Right, right. I think that's so important. It just made me want to ask, because I know for our listeners for sure, whether they're business owners, students, whatever walk of life they're at right now, or even CEOs who haven't been able to go through this process. Maybe we have CEOs listening who still have the 5-year-old running their lives. It kind of gives a small insight on maybe how to help themselves start uncovering those patterns and maybe connecting those dots. I think we're going to talk a little bit about culture as a battlefield. What other practical steps can these CEOs, these business owners, even students, or just anybody, a mom listening, you never know, can leaders take to build teams or build situation structures that thrive through uncertainty, through change, through chaos?
Train your people.
Train your people.
Our education system is not designed to train people for uncertainty. Our education system is designed for you to get the right answer from a book and give the right answer on a test. That's how we are rewarded, and we bring that into the workplace. So we are trained to deal with certainty, to be experts in something. Speaking about Steve Jobs, because he seemed to be more competent in dealing with uncertainty. Train your
So
people.
when it
That
comes
that
to,
let me just say this. So when we talked about the two examples, the guy in the mortgage industry and the woman as a child washing dishes, they actually had to unlearn those conversations they were having with themselves. So you're dismantling them. That's why you're discharging baggage, not making it like it was wrong. It's something that happened, and that's your interpretation as a 13-year-old, as a 4-year-old. That's what you had at 4. So if just telling people to get over it and go through it, like some of the worst advice you can tell someone is you're an adult now, get over it.
I agree. Because a lot of the things that, well, when we're working with paradigms, the thing that's blocking the person, they don't know what they don't know. So to say,
Right.
just get over it, they might not even have awareness of what they're getting over yet. Would they just see maybe a symptom or they see the aftermath?
Well, right. They'll be aware that certain things happen, but
Hmm.
they have no distinctions for how it impacted them
Right.
and how that has stuck with them all these years.
So, how do you train dealing with uncertainty when you're coming out of a system? Maybe you've been in a workforce for 10, 15, 20 years that mirrors the education system of
Right.
knowing how to find a specific answer in order to be correct to get a gold star.
Right.
How do we retrain ourselves, or what are practical steps that leaders can take to retrain themselves, retrain their teams to face chaos, love chaos, however you want to put it, or be even
Right.
just more familiar with facing uncertainty? Is it just creating problems, or is it kind of a
Well,
multi-layered thing?
yeah. So you can, as a leader, help your people, but the real big answer is you're asking how do you become a Navy SEAL? It's not going to be from reading books and being aware. You train to become a Navy SEAL, and the military invests $2 million in each person to become a Navy SEAL. That's a big investment. They don't, and these are Navy SEALs are smart people that just to start, they are intelligent and they are physically fit. That's not enough to be a Navy SEAL. You train. And most people who sign up to become a Navy SEAL do not become Navy SEALs. Most don't make the cut. So that's why I say train your people. To be a Navy SEAL, you're trained to get there. So one thing that I've seen be very effective, and you as a leader will need to know how to manage people with what I'm about to say. Ask your people to do things they don't know how to do. See, as a leader, you first have to have kind of an inventory of the person and what they are capable of, and then look at a world slightly outside of that and stretch them beyond where they are. So if you ask someone to do something they don't know how to do, I've seen it where they say, "Well, I don't know how to do that. You're overestimating me. I'm not competent." And see, that's when you hear all these limiting beliefs. They're telling you that they don't know how to do it. I can't do it. I've never done this. They're giving you all the reasons. And as a leader, if you stay with them instead of just, they're selling you, basically, they're selling you on why they can't do it. But if you provide the kind of support and the conversations that put them at ease, I remember asking someone to do something and I said, "Hey, take 90 minutes, work on this. And if you have any questions, just come see me. But you have 90 minutes to work on this." And they had already spent 5 minutes, and 5 minutes is a long time trying to convince someone that you are incompetent. And the guy goes off and he comes back in 90 minutes and says, "Oh my God, I did it. I didn't believe I knew how to do this." And it's like, great. Now I just created a whole new accountability for you. Now that you know, you built it from nothing, from the ground up. So asking people to do things they don't know how to do. And as soon as they say, "I can't do it," if you cop out like they do, then you'll have a team of people who are not good. So going back to the story of Steve Jobs and the first computer mouse in Apple, he asked the guy to do something he didn't know how to do. And so in doing it, there are so many other things that you develop, but there's something called neuroplasticity where, in our brains, we have neural pathways that look almost like roadways in your brain. And that's where all the information, everything you've seen, you've heard, your knowledge, you call experience, all of that they're stored in your neural pathways. And when you're asked to do something that your neural pathways has no knowledge on how to do, people go to default. And it's not as simple as saying it's uncomfortable. There's an incompetence. They have no competence in their brain to accomplish it. So it's quick to say, I can't do it. And once they do it, they start growing completely new neural pathways that will now contain new knowledge and new perspectives. And if you do that with people enough times, the brain is plastic. It can grow completely new neural pathways, which then helps the person have a.
Looking for expert legal support you can trust? At Grayfield Solicitors, we simplify complex legal issues for both businesses and private clients across Essex and beyond. From pensions and insolvency law to construction, conveyancing, and commercial litigation, our experienced team is here to help. With clear, practical advice and a commitment to results, we put your peace of mind first, every step of the way. We're proud sponsors of the King Dems Podcast, championing voices that enlighten the world on growth mindset, leadership, and business insights for entrepreneurs. Visit grayfieldsolicitors.com today to book your free consultation.
A much broader view on life and ways to solve problems. And they become much better. They're able to transfer. Now you put them in something completely unknown, but you've asked them to do things they didn't know how to do enough times that they become comfortable in developing that neuroplasticity. So that's a great way to do it. And you don't need any kind of special training. You don't need my secret sauce and how I do it and help people uncover blind spots. It's a fairly simple way to do it.
So it
Noella,
sounds like
please allow me to tackle Ted head on this one. I'm not
go
tackling.
for
I'm
it.
actually trying to corroborate with him because he felt like Ted was actually describing myself, right? I think about my life
Okay.
because sometimes life puts you on that neuroplasticity journey, right? Maybe I'm a neuroplastic surgeon. I don't know. Like in high school, I was a science student, and you know, also coming from, would I say, a Christian home, a home of faith, and my mom used to like drum the scriptures in our heads, and one of the scriptures that was really drummed every day was Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Like, never tell my parents you can't do something. Like, yeah, I don't know, maybe they could kill you for saying that. Like, just attempt it. I remember, like, growing up, my dad sort of forced myself and my younger brothers to work with the laborers building our house. So we were like working with the bricklayers, mixing cement, gravel, and we learned
Mm.
all this stuff. Then he pushed us to work with the carpenters and like the different handy, workmen. We had to like learn different crafts, right? And
Right.
we're involved in like the family business, doing fish farming, poultry farming. So by the time I was done with high school, like I could do like different multiple things. So
Mm.
the mentality was always like, if you tell me to do something new, it will probably relate to something I've done before, or I'll just be like, okay, yeah, it's not new, been there, done that. So I was a science student doing the whole physics, chemistry, biology, but ended up studying economics, then ended up becoming a chartered accountant, what you guys call a CPA. And, from there, delving into tech, delving into communication, media. Like my life has just been, and an ex-colleague of mine from university was on this podcast one time. He said, I've watched you. You've always been mm, morphing. That's what he said. You're always metamorphosing into something else, like since when we're in our
Mm.
20s. And I don't know, is that like life forcing you to be neuroplastic? Because I don't even know what I am capable of doing. I could maybe next year decide to learn some new skill. But the thing is, over time, I've discovered that I'm never scared to learn something new because I just feel like my brain has been there multiple times. So, and I think now it's becoming the real human AI, learning different AI tools. Like life forces you sometimes. But I'd love for you to speak to that. Like some people do it deliberately, but some of us, life actually forced us on that pathway.
No, neuroplasticity is just a normal part of life.
Hmm.
The reason all of us healthy human beings were not able to walk as infants because we didn't have neural pathways in our brain to walk.
Hmm.
So we needed neuroplasticity to talk, to feed yourself, to put clothes on. All of those things require neuroplasticity. And I can help people better understand. So last year I met a guy and he has a 27-year-old daughter who in high school played sports, went off to college, did well, and then at 26, 27 gets into a car accident and her head hits so hard that her neural pathways that tells her to walk disconnected.
Oh.
She's 27 years old and cannot walk. Intellectually, she knows how to walk.
Mm.
She cannot because the part of the brain that was connected to telling the body what to do, and walking is so complex. There's so many feedback loops. There's this back and forth with the brain to the muscles to the feet to which nerve endings and it
Mhm.
to so that you don't fall over, and that connection is lost. So now she has to engage in neuroplasticity to grow new neural pathways to connect to that so that she can walk again. See, this is how important neuroplasticity is. So it's a normal part of human existence. So if they did a uh, brain scan when you're first born, you have X amount of neural pathways in your brain. By the time you're 2, that grows exponentially. By the time you're 10, you have even more pathways. And they used to think you humans had a limit, like by a certain age, that was it. You wouldn't have more. And then most recently, they have found that you can grow more neural pathways. The challenge with that is it's almost like if you've never gone to the gym and you're working on a muscle, you may feel sore. You may, in that uncertainty of growing new neural pathways, you may even experience a headache because the brain has that new neural pathway growing. So that would be what people would describe as uncomfortable. When you hear someone say, "Oh my God, you're talking to me about things that it's giving me a headache," is they have nowhere in their brain to put that. So they have to grow a new neural pathway. And it's easier to say, "Stop. I don't want to hear this anymore,"
I was
instead
gonna talk.
of working through it.
I was gonna touch on that exact thing, right? You speaking reminds me of my colleagues, from the big four accounting firms. You know, it's
Okay.
interesting how a lot of smart people work with the big four accounting firms, but we are also like highly
Mm.
specialist. I was an auditor, for
Okay.
example, but I was
Okay.
kind of lucky to have moved from PwC to KPMG, then to like a medium-sized firm and working like
Right.
across different industries. There are people that I've met that the whole of their career they worked with an industry specific unit. Now
Right.
tell these people, okay, can you audit another industry? They'll tell you clear cut, I don't know how to do it, and they don't want to
Exactly.
attempt it, right? And
Right.
it's crazy. Like, why can't you apply your mind to do something else, right? Some people tell, and even recently, like working with somebody who is ex Big Four, like they are so used to working with templates. If you don't give them a template, they like, oh, they can't, come up with something innovative
Right.
outside of, their, would I say, their templates or the ways in which they work. So a lot of them are stuck in their ways. And it's amazing. Like, why would you be stuck in a particular pathway, right? So is it that like doing certain jobs that require certain standards, certain templates reduces your neuroplasticity?
It's going back to the woman washing dishes and a guy in the mortgage industry. There are conversations that will tell you what you can and cannot do. People have presuppositions about themselves and what they can do. I think I spoke in the last video. one of the things people want to avoid is looking bad. So if I have never done this, even though I'm a CPA, I have a high IQ, and you're asking me to work in this completely new industry where I don't have the knowledge, I may look incompetent. So I'd rather work where I'm very competent because I'll look good here. And so it's natural for human beings to do things they don't know how to do. And the proof is when every infant first learns to walk, they do not look good. They look terrible. They're wobbly, they're falling, and they don't have the language of looking bad and looking good. They don't have that language. They don't have the language of being smart and successful. They don't know about any of that. It's almost like they only have a commitment to get from here to there, and they will do what it takes to get. And they don't know that they are engaged in neuroplasticity. They don't know any of that. They just know, I want to get from here to there. There's this commitment. They don't have any conversations about how terrible I look and I'm clumsy and wobbly. But as adults, that's part of the identity, which is, hey, you don't want to look bad over there. You want to always make sure you do your best and give the right answers, work with certainty. We're given all kinds of conversation. You gave in the last video, you gave a great example of how your company experimented with working from home, and then COVID hit, and you all had already developed the capacity to work from home. It wasn't even a transition. It was like, okay, it was just
Plug and
going to
play.
another office.
Plug and
Right.
play.
It was like just going to a new office. It didn't matter because you all had already developed that kind of neuroplasticity of what it's like to work from home.
Noella, over to you.
See, people know what they know, and they know what they've been given to know. I'll turn this into somewhat abstract. So when people talk about free will, people have free will to the extent they were given free will. In other words, people do not have free will. And it's a joke to think that you do, because your free will comes from the choices that you were given, whether it's part of your identity or part of an identity you don't want it to be part of. In other words, there's this menu you're given, and this is what it means to be a human, and you choose from this. And if you choose outside of that, society will correct you. So it's better to avoid being corrected and just focus on what I know how to do. But this is not free will. But if I start talking to you about how I can walk across the top of the New York skyline, I will sound ridiculous. That's not part of free will. And I tell you, hey, look, let me tell you why that's possible. The human body has frequency in megahertz of about 76 megahertz. And if your megahertz frequency drops to like 40, you're susceptible to cancer. So there is something they've been able to measure. So if you look across the New York City skyline, there are lines, and they're different colors. There's a green, there's a yellow, and there's a blue. And then there's a color for which we don't have a name. And each of those colors has a frequency. If I raise my frequency, so the green one has a frequency of 1,000. If I raise the frequency of my body to 1,000, I can walk right across on that green line. And it looks like I'm walking on Earth, but it's just, it's a frequency. And so maybe one day we will discover that that's what gravity is. We don't know what gravity is. Gravity is just a frequency. But the way we look at it, we only have explanations, but we don't really understand what gravity is.
I have a quote for you.
So I'm talking about something not on the menu.
Ted, I have a quote for you from Idi Amin Dada. That's the former president of Uganda from 1971 to 1979. And he reportedly said, there is freedom of speech, but I cannot guarantee freedom after speech.
Freedom after speech? Yeah.
Yeah, I said there is freedom of speech.
that's even in the US, they say you have freedom of speech, but you start talking about something, we have all this political correctness and wokeness and cancel culture. So your freedom of speech is kind of been a lie always. And even if it's not something that's offensive, if I go around talking about walking across the top of the New York City skyline, people, if I go into a job interview saying that, they may not want to hire me unless it's the sciences. Maybe, they will consider that. But if I want to work on Wall Street, they're like, man, get this guy out of here. He's been doing drugs with Steve Jobs.
Freedom after speech, they cannot guarantee.
Well, see, that once again, Steve Jobs didn't care what people were saying about him. So it's almost like he had the capacity to let go of his identity and have a no identity, like a nothing. And from nothing, I'll ask the two of you, if you can get to nothing, what can you create from nothing?
Anything.
Right.
Because no thing.
As opposed to creating on top.
Anything and
Go ahead.
everything.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say no
Because
thing,
no
so
thing, what?
nothing. If you are no thing, it's kind of a paradox. Being no thing attached to you actually opens you up to everything.
Right. Yeah. Instead of trying to
I
build
totally
on
agree.
top of what's already there and making it better or different, you have
Mhm.
nothing. So then you can create, you have the freedom to actually create. You don't have that menu that they say, hey, you have free will as long as you choose from this menu right here. Anything on the menu you can choose, and that's your free will.
Mm.
Tabula rasa, that's what the ancient Greek philosophers call the human mind, a clean slate. So if
Okay.
you have a clean slate, you can actually build anything on that clean slate.
And Noella, what were you going to say?
So when you're transforming these companies, and we're speaking about free will right now, would you say that when we're measuring breakthroughs, that it's tied to the ability of whichever subject you're working with, whether it's one person or a team, would you say that the breakthrough can be measured by a person or a team's ability to expand their free will? Or are we trying to get people to still operate from a certain list? Because we are talking about companies. These companies have values, they have rules, they have laws, they have yada, yada, yada. Are they, when you are pushing them past their paradigms, I guess it's kind of a stacked question, but how much are they staying on their menus and how much are they expanding their free will? And is there kind of a measure beyond KPIs to measure how expansive someone is moving through their particular breakthroughs?
So I mentioned this in the last video. I said there's a distinction between thinking and having thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So giving people access to thinking. So what we are taught to do is have thoughts and we believe it's thinking. And even psychologists say that for every waking hour, people only spend 5 minutes actually thinking and the other 55 minutes is just thoughting, having thoughts. And the thoughts are the things that you know. It's what's in your neural pathways. You've seen it, you've been exposed to it, you've done it, you've read it. These are all the things that you can have thoughts about and you can put them in different sequences and make things better, but those are generally not breakthroughs. Thinking is thinking that which is unthought. So imagine thinking something you've never thought. So training people to distinguish between thinking and having thoughts so that people can freely think without depending on the thoughts they already have. That's the training.
So, depending on how much they believe, are aware of, and exercise their ability to have their own thoughts is, I guess, the measure of the
Nope, not to
breakthrough.
have their own thoughts. Nope, it's not
Not
to
to
have
have
their
their
own
own
thoughts.
thoughts.
It's not to have their own thoughts
Okay.
because you already have those.
Right.
So you're thinking that which is unthought.
Okay. So, is that,
It's
so
being
that's
able to
different than thinking new thoughts?
distinctions are no, it has nothing. Thinking has nothing to do with thoughts. They're two
Okay.
different worlds.
Okay.
You're trying to you're taking the old paradigm and trying to improve it and adding something to it. I'm creating a whole new paradigm that has nothing to do with it.
Well, I understand. I
It's
do
like
understand
using a horse,
separating.
using no, I'm not separating them. The front of the hand is having thoughts, the back is thinking. They are distinct. You don't confuse the front of your hand with the back of your hand. They're not separate, but they are very distinct. It's having those distinctions.
Amazing.
Distinctions are very important. We did an exercise. We talked about something, the three of us, in a pre-call. And unfortunately, if we did it now, the audience wouldn't get the benefit of you having to think through it. But it was the whole thing of walking on a beach and seeing a sign that this is a minefield.
Let's have another simulation.
Well, we've already done it. So the audience would miss out. They would miss out on the two of you thinking through how to navigate that situation. So you already have an answer now.
Let's create another situation.
Create another situation.
Yeah.
The other situation I could give to you, but I've already given you the answer to that.
Well, it's interesting because the beach story becoming a minefield, it definitely involves these invisible barriers. And again, trying to see something that we don't know that we don't see. Adamola, what type of invisible barriers do we need to?
There are actually ways in which you measure, would I say, results. And again, coming from me, that comes from a background that you have known, would I say, I don't want to say, for the lack of a better word, would I say issues, but they're not issues basically. That is from a joking perspective, right? So coming from that PwC background, that Big Four background, we love to measure things, very numerical ways, right?
Right.
So
Right.
like how do you tend to measure those breakthroughs or the impact of the breakthroughs, on companies, like how you measure the success, right? In terms of the traditional KPIs and even beyond the traditional metrics, like revenue growth, profit margins, market share. How do you, would I say, measure the impact of these transformations, the breakthroughs on the bottom line and like very visible, would I say, metrics in terms of our company's growth and development?
Sure. People create projects, and that project will have revenue attached to it or significant cost savings, and that's very measurable. So if you create a new division that did not exist, that's very measurable. If you reduce the amount of steps in getting certain things done, and maybe you can even reduce the amount of people involved in certain activities, you've saved a lot. Repurpose people.
Mhm. There was a guy who was in the military. He's ex-military. He was on this podcast recently, and he said one thing that the military really helped him with was reducing the amount of steps and time between idea and execution. And that actually makes you
Okay.
successful because when you reduce the time and the steps between idea and execution, and you're able to master repetition, right? Acquisition, you're looking at the speed of innovation, right? The cultural resilience, the leadership depth, the problem solving capacity,
Give me an example.
right? Cultural resilience, right? Speed of innovation, speed of adaptation, growth.
So you're asking, how do you know if your people are developing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So when you have each person create their own breakthrough initiative, so the CEO creates a breakthrough, and then the people under them will create breakthrough initiatives in service to the CEOs. And those breakthrough initiatives, those are not, this is not about evolution. It's not about doing something that you're already doing and doing it better. It's some possibility that you don't know how to accomplish. And by taking on that breakthrough project, you are going to encounter disruptions and breakdowns and problems that you haven't dealt with in the past and being able to navigate through that. So a big part of my work is ensuring that, as you were saying about the guy in the military, to be able to close the gap
Mhm.
from idea to completion
Execution.
of
Mhm.
the project, right? So while you're executing it, but it's the completion. It's not, it's, you can execute, not complete it. So fulfilling the project and while executing that project, you are going to encounter things, problems that perhaps are over your head. So how do you navigate that without derailing the entire project, right? So as people take on those projects, you see their capacity for being able to navigate the breakthroughs that come with the problem, developing a greater capacity for solving problems. So it's being able to take the mindset technology I have and be able to point it like a laser into a specific problem where you get to exercise. Basically, you're exercising neuroplasticity so that you become more effective. And when that project's completed, you create a new project. And what you find is people become more self sufficient and require less hand holding and less involvement from leadership to solve problems because they are developing the capacity to solve problems by having them create their own problem, which is a breakthrough project.
So, what are the hidden blind spots that, for even high achieving executives that they often overlook? What are those hidden blind spots?
Well, part of it could be I had a client once who went to an Ivy League-ish school and high IQ and even had athletic ability. And he was so smart that his intelligence was shooting him in the foot.
The curse of the genius. That's what I call it. The curse of the genius.
I relate to that.
Well, like your genius is irrelevant.
Right.
Hmm.
It's really irrelevant because I've seen people who are not geniuses be way more successful in
Hmm.
terms of starting a company and being able to run it.
Hmm.
But if you want to be a leader, uh, having to be the smartest one in the room and prove it to everyone just will have you surrounded by a bunch of yes men.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you end up with you don't have the most capable people around you, and you have to end up doing so many things on your own. And if you're not in the office, people don't do anything. So
Hmm.
you have a company that's not growing. It's not as innovative. You don't have people coming up with these innovative projects because they're all depending on you. So you're stunting the growth of the organization. In fact, you could even invalidate people by showing them how you are the smartest. We spoke about Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath, and he talked about how people who were dyslexic at a young age in elementary school figured out that they couldn't keep up with class. So what they did is they made best friends with the smartest in history and the smartest in math and the smartest in science and the smartest in English, and they would delegate homework to those people and they would have discussion groups with everyone. Basically, they were training to be CEOs and didn't know it.
Oh, I
So
see.
they knew they were not the smartest in the group. So when they did become
CEO.
CEO, they now were able to hire people smarter than themselves and know how to delegate and lead people smarter than themselves. A
Hmm.
lot of people believe that they have to be the smartest and they don't know how to lead people smarter than themselves because they may be in competition. So they are sabotaging. That becomes a blind spot. And then their smartness is irrelevant.
Confession time. Confession time. You reminded me
Sure.
of something I used to do when I was in high school, right? I was one of the smart kids, right? But I was a skinny kid, and they used to think they could bully me, and that's one of the reasons why I got into taekwondo, karate, they to delve into mixed martial arts, right? But when I was in high school, I used to teach like the strong kids. Like I had my personal bouncer in secondary school. So
Okay.
I used to teach these kids, right? And, run their assignments for them, just in exchange for protection. So if you want to, if you want to bully me, you have to go through those big boys first, right? So
Right.
like
Sure.
it's all self-preservation. You need to use what you have to get what you want. So, like,
Right.
I think about it now, like that skill of having to pull people together, right, that are strong in areas where you're weak, right, is actually a
Okay.
leadership skill. And it's
Yes.
it's it's always a great thing when you build that leadership skill from a very young age. It enables you to be able to communicate and have negotiations and have win-win situations with people. Because I realize win-win is the best, formula in business. So thank you for reminding us of the past and digging into the past. But when you talk about these, high level individuals who are very successful and very smart, right? And I think it's something I call the curse of the genius. And for a person like myself, I'm like I try to be very well aware of the fact that okay, a high IQ is not necessarily a ticket to success. You always need to continuously be a student in life. And I have once been a teacher and I've realized that the best teachers are the best students. Of course, the more you learn, the more you're able to even, communicate knowledge and information. But at some point, some people become too successful for their own good in quotes. And I noticed that the more successful a person is, the more difficult it is for the people around them to tell them the truth, right? And it creates this success bias, you know, where past wins can create like dangerous assumptions about future strategies. You feel invincible. You feel because you have been on a winning streak, right, you will continue to be on that winning streak. In philosophy, I think they call it the fallacy of the slippery slope, right? So your thinking becomes highly fallacious because you are stringing your arguments based off wrong premises and you would arrive at the wrong conclusion. So there's this constant need to keep re-engineering your mind, keep getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, keep learning and relearning and unlearning, the things of old. I think about how the things that made me successful 5 years ago are no longer relevant today, even 2 years ago, even 1 year ago. Like looking at the algorithms in podcasting, for example, like the algorithms we were using last year, the titles, descriptions you're
Right.
using on YouTube are not relevant right now, right? So
Right.
I think the tech environment forces you to keep on learning and relearning. But how do you help people that have that success bias? Because you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? And a lot of people, it's easy for people to get stuck in their ways real fast, especially when they become in quote successful. So how do you help clients that fall into this bracket?
I don't talk about bias, not my world.
How do you help them? Because for me, I feel like it's like an opening of the mind, right? I might not have the right words to explain it, but the truth is you need to be open-minded in order to be able to accept more information, more like keeping your hands open, because if your hands are not open, how can you receive the new information
Yeah.
that you need?
So I don't look at as information as being as valuable as most people think. I just think of it this way. If someone wants to go on a diet and they get all the information for how to lose weight, what happens to most people, at least in the US? What happens?
Then Noella can talk
They
about
end
it.
up buying, I feel like in the US, once you start researching one diet, you go down a rabbit hole of all these other different diets, and then
Right.
you're trying to compare them all, and then you end up buying a ton of different products that you
But
probably don't need.
how much does the information help you lose weight?
Paralysis by analysis.
Not at all. Not at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Information isn't what giving people information on how to lose weight. Most people take all the information from the best diet in the world and they end up gaining weight anyway. So
Wow.
clearly it's not the information that has you lose weight. What has people lose weight is having some clear distinctions about the conversations they have about themselves when they look in the mirror. And until you transform that, I mean, there are literally women out there who have gained weight because they were shapely at a young age, let's say 14 years old, and adult men, 20s, 30s, would pursue them. And the way those young girls protected themselves was to gain weight. And that keeps away those men who they wanted nothing to do with. And then now that young girl who was shapely at 14, 16, or 25, the whole strategy to hide myself by gaining weight is now she can't stop it. And it was successful. It wasn't in her best interest, but at, let's say, 14 years old, that's what she knew to do. So that's if she wants to lose weight, you're going to have to deal with that. And the best diet will not help her. So one of the conversations that's not just with leaders is change is hard. And people actually believe change is hard. So you're a CEO of an organization and you come in with a presupposition that change is hard. And now I'm going to transform corporate culture. And it's hard because people don't want to change. It's really similar to the whole burnout thing. So once you say I'm going to burn out, you're going to find a million reasons to be burnt out. And because you want to be able to say I'm burnt out. So you say change is hard, you're going to find a million reasons. So you, as a leader, you will not properly educate yourself to make the kinds of transformations that are necessary because you've already presupposed it's hard. So you're going to go into it knowing it's hard and believing your people are going to resist you and you're ready. You're really going into a battlefield and you just made it hard. And so when it's hard, you get to say, see, I knew it. And you get to be right about change being hard, but you were really unprepared. It's like the guy who never played US football who says, I'm going to go be in a backfield. And when he gets clobbered, he says, this is not for me, but he never trained for the game.
When the rubber hits the road.
Rubber hits the road or more when the helmet hits you.
You get to have a new reality. But for change,
Right.
when it comes to change, you're talking about that weight change, for example. Change is hard, and I think it depends on the person. For a person like me, I have fast body metabolism, so it's
No,
easy for me
change is
to
not
add
hard.
weight and
Change is
to
not
reduce weight.
hard. Change is not hard. Change is not hard.
Yeah, for
When
me, I
people
don't think
say,
that kind of change is hard, right?
no,
But for
no,
some
no,
other
no, listen,
people,
listen.
I don't know.
No, change is not hard
Hmm.
for anyone.
Hmm.
When people
Really?
say intimate relationships take hard work, that's another fallacy. So we have all these conversations and they completely shape our actions and they restrict us for what we can and cannot do.
I
Change is
guess
not hard for anyone,
it's
period.
it's a mindset thing.
It's what I just like losing weight. Information to transform a culture does not do it. And information to lose weight, that does not do it.
But the weight thing, I kind of feel is sort of unfair because some people have fast body metabolism. If I decide to fast today and tomorrow, I'm going to lose probably about 4 or 5 kg, easy peasy. And if I eat pasta for the next 3 days, I'm going to get it back. So I feel like I'm a weight cheat, right? Because of the way my body operates. But for some people, it's difficult. If they eat that same pasta with me, they're going to probably balloon about 10 kg, and it's difficult for them to lose it downwards because they don't have that fast body metabolism that I have. So it's like a cheat code in my own DNA. So like the effort I have to put in right into weight gain or weight loss is different from another person. So
And
for
as long
me,
as you believe that, you'll be as long as you believe that, you'll be right, and there's nothing I can say.
no, I'm not saying I
See,
am right. I'm just saying that I feel like the change is easier for some people due to maybe certain biological, or would I say, yeah, biological advantages that they have over other people. But still it's a mindset thing, right? But for some people it's easier than the others due to their, you know, DNA setup or their genes. That's what I was just trying to say. I'm not trying
okay.
to demean whether it's hard or not hard. I'm just saying I feel like it's easier for some of us than others.
And if people go into it with that conversation, they'll be right, and they'll look for evidence to prove that they're right.
So it reminds me of this rapid transformational therapist. Her name is Marissa Peer. So her focus is on rapid transformational therapy. It was like a hypnosis meditation on accident. The way I found it, I didn't realize it was that she was going to be teaching a meditation, but I ended up doing it. So it was really fun. But I love listening to her meditations and things like that, but she has mentioned one of the strategies she uses, and the reason I'm bringing it up, just because we are talking about bodies right now, kind of a little bit of a
Mhm.
tangent, is Ted, you mentioned this in our last conversation, that you've had experience and you've put into practice, I may be saying this the wrong way, but directing your own thoughts or using your own thoughts to influence or direct your body to perform better just by directing your own thought patterns. And she actually has a very similar type of model to where she suggests that people can eradicate illness or increase their metabolic state or like you experienced, do more reps, right? Or have
Right.
run longer, breathe deeper, whatever it may be. So I think that's really important to take into consideration as well when we're talking about the underlying beliefs that people have when it comes to whatever type of biological or whatever people think is wrong with their body. You know, there are hundreds, thousands of things. My nose doesn't look right. My hair doesn't look right. I'm
Right.
too tall, too short, too skinny, too fat, whatever. That the underlying belief system can be so complex that with these practices and what we're seeing, when we are recoding our body through our thoughts, it can actually affect things like blood pressure, metabolic state, and ultimately affect weight. So I think that's really important just to touch on in this situation too as well, because when we're thinking about the human mind, like you mentioned earlier, we also spoke about this in the last conversation at one point when we were building cars. Man didn't build them to go past a certain point because they believed that if a woman was in that car, remind me or let me know this is wrong, but you mentioned that her insides or her womb or something like that would explode.
Right.
And then we
Our
realized,
uterus. The
realized
uterus would explode.
later that obviously that was not true.
Right.
So I think if we operate within this frame, with that being said, I would really love to hear kind of a case study of kind of an outline of a company that you've helped personally shift from survival to scaling. Ted, if you could take us, through the journey from crisis point to, I know you kind of hate the term mindset shift because it's so much different than that, but through the strategic problems, maybe it was a specific problem or maybe it was more broad. And through their cultural transformation, they then had to make in that company and the growth that they experienced. Could you please give us one of your favorite examples?
Sure. Well, I probably gave one already.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one where the guy, really smart guy, Wharton MBA, and athletic also, and worked in the big brokerage houses. He worked in mergers and acquisitions. So he made a lot of money, very successful. And then he decided to go out on his own and start his own company. And he wanted to do what's called a roll up. And for those who don't know what a roll up is, like, take for an example, the laundromat business, it would be fragmented. There are lots of different owners, mom and pops that own laundromats around the country. And if the three of us decided we wanted to do a roll up, we'd go out and we'd buy a whole bunch of laundromats around the U.S., roll it up into one big company, and we'd have economies of scale and being able to buy all kinds of things cheaper, put in better management systems. But we'd be rolling up a lot of little small companies into a bigger company. And so this guy wanted to do a roll up in a specific industry. And before I met him, he had bought 3 companies, and it took him 3 years. He bought one company each year. And one of the challenges when you do a roll up and you're buying companies that already has employees, you're now integrating. This is this they call post integration of human capital. And that's what kills the people, kills successful mergers and acquisitions, because people have their own culture, they have their own systems, whether it's production, finance. So being able to integrate people is where you have problems. So he wanted to do a roll up, but he was moving slower than he wanted, and he had never been a CEO. So there were a few things that needed to happen. One is training and develop him to be a more effective CEO and being able to be more aggressive with his roll up. The other one was, as he acquired companies, he's taken a guy, an entrepreneur who ran a $6 million company. And now that entrepreneur is going to be responsible for a $40 million division. And you're going to have to upskill that person. Often when you do make those acquisitions, you're buying talent. A lot of those people that you bring into your company are giving you lip service. They have their own agenda, and it may be in conflict with yours. So I had to take this guy and upskill him and then get him aligned with the CEO of the, let's say, the umbrella company. But then what also happened is, instead of taking a year to do one acquisition, he was banging out 6, 7 acquisitions a year. And I supported him in integrating the sales and operations into one culture, which then allowed that company to grow exponentially, not just from the what you call strategic growth from acquisitions, but also organic. The sales force was not, you had all these different companies, and the salespeople didn't trust the people from the other companies, even though they were all selling to the same person. So they wouldn't share leads, which makes the company grow. It was a roll up, but it was 3 different units in the roll up, and they provided 3 different services in each division. So being able to support that CEO to be more aggressive in his acquisition strategy and successfully bring them together, integrate the sales force, upskill him as a CEO to be able to run a larger company, and then also upskill the talent that he was buying, which allowed them to grow well beyond what his projections were for year 1, 2, and 3 after I met him. So, and that was it was transforming culture. And it was very interesting in that because when I'd go on their premises once a week, people knew I was coming and they would corner me. Like they would be like, hey man, I want to talk to you. I have this idea. I want you have the CEO's ear. And so what it did is help me find other leaders within the organization and help shape them and help them create projects. So they were actually excited about creating their own projects that would support the CEO. And then there were these untapped leaders in the organization that I was able to, pull from and help them do things. So organizationally, they were better positioned to handle exponential growth without falling apart by just using what he had in the organization.
Anything else you want to say about the case study at all that you think specifically our audience would really need to hear? Maybe we have somebody at home who is a CEO or is leading a team or building a team. Anything else about that case study that you would want to touch on?
Well, his problem he was creating was actually bringing all these organizations together as one company. And when you look at just even large corporations, most mergers and acquisitions never realize the intended value of the merger or acquisition. Right? When Price Waterhouse merged with Coopers and Lybrand, they had problems for a long time with that. So it's not just acquisitions, buying and merging with companies is not a very easy thing to do.
Mhm.
And people always say, should we build it or buy it? So do we buy a company or do we just build it organically inside? And there are pros and cons of both. But one of the biggest challenges is when you buy it, you now have to fold those people in and hope that they're not in conflict with what already exists. It's and I like bringing it to how even in intimate relationships, when you get married, people tend to think the way we do things is better than the way you do things. And even when people are in an intimate relationship, they may never say these words, but they may say, the way your family did that is ridiculous. How could you all do that? My family, the way we did it was much better. And you're now in conflict with the other person. So imagine that happens in your personal life and it happens even in the professional world when you bring two companies together. Our way is a better way. Or even if our way isn't better, we're not going to change because change is hard and we're going to keep doing it our way. So
Wonderful.
being able to cut through that and sort of, to be able to transform mindset so that people are more empowered to be able to look at things objectively and say, well, their way is actually better, so let's take that on. Or I was giving lip service. And I had a guy, he said I was actually giving him lip service. I had my own ideas now and I really understand. And it's interesting because when you're working with the CEO and other leaders, those other leaders need to be comfortable enough and trust me to say things that perhaps they don't want me to say back to that person. So it's very interesting the level of trust that you have with that.
Ted, I'm going to say something to that effect. Like, organizational culture is a very, very big deal. And I was
Right.
laughing because, you attack my alumni here, right?
Right.
When
Right.
Price Waterhouse were merging with Coopers and Lybrand, it wasn't such an easy merging. And also,
Right.
I've also
Right.
like had the privilege of working with another accounting firm who also experienced, an acquisition. It's so crazy that, and one thing that accountants tend to fight over a lot is methodology and the tool sets.
Right.
There are ways to audit particular FSLIs, that's financial statement line items, right? So they would, accountants are very used to being stuck in a particular way. So it's a very serious fight. Like it's not, I feel like Ted is understating that fight. He's been too polite about it. You're being too polite. I'm going to come. You know me. I always say it as it is. It's usually a dirty fight, and it's crazy that
And
one of those places where I worked, they had to run the two companies in parallel.
right.
Yeah.
And
So
factor
sometimes,
in IT systems.
yeah, yeah.
who has the better IT system.
Yeah, the IT systems, the tool sets, the methodologies, the company culture, like even up to leave days, the hierarchy. Sometimes you have some
Right.
other firms structured as associate, semi senior, senior associate, assistant manager, manager. Some people have manager one, manager two before senior manager. Some people have just
Right.
one level of manager. It's crazy merging, the hierarchy as well. It's a lot of dirty fight.
Absolutely.
And even the pay
Ab-
structure as well, right? I just feel like but what I remember, it brings trauma, because it's a lot of dirty fighting when it comes.
Hey, well,
It's actually
who gets which resources? Who gets which resources? Our
that,
department is who gets which
yeah,
resources? Our
that's it.
department's more valuable than your department,
Yeah, that's even another fight. It's not funny. So that's why for
right?
me, I prefer that organic growth to acquisitions, basically. And like, I'm not saying this is right, but this is my preference. When I make an acquisition, I like them to run, you know, parallel instead of just absorbing them, because absorbing them brings too much, chaos that would disrupt the momentum. So I believe in keeping the momentum in a particular organization, but sometimes, like, the cost of expansion can halt your momentum. But some people don't think, or some leaders don't think about that until, in your words, the rubber hits the road. So who better to ask the questions on AI than AI himself? So, Ted, we love to talk about AI on this podcast, and
Okay.
disruption and AI are like twin siblings. Would I say I don't know whether they're identical or they're fraternal, but I know they're twin. AI has brought a lot of disruptive, technological advancement in this age and time. And you are a master of the science of disruption and, progress with chaos, right? So how does artificial intelligence fit into your philosophy of disruption? Is it a tool? Is it a threat? Is it a mirror? Is it an amplifier? And what brilliant strategies can leaders or leadership in this age and time, you know, adopt using artificial intelligence to achieve progress for their teams, their organizations, and of course, in their personal
Okay.
lives?
So first, tell me in what ways has AI been disruptive? The question.
It's disrupted a lot.
Speaking
It's
speaking
disrupted
of
the
disruption,
way a lot of
speak speaking of disruption, I think my internet connection was disrupted.
Okay. So I asked. That's what I thought. I asked the question in what way has AI been disruptive?
Okay, in what ways has AI been disruptive, right? Whoa, multiple different
Yes.
ways. Because, when you look at the workforce these days, a lot of, large corporations are laying people off, changing their systems, changing their processes. And, I believe
What
that when you want to achieve change in organizations, change involves three things: the people, the processes, and the systems. And AI has been able to change the people, the processes, and the systems, all three. So, yeah.
what specifically has AI disrupted?
So I'll give, for example, in consulting roles, for example, right? I can speak to my own industry consulting. We need less junior team members, right, to do a lot of the repetitive work, for example. And that means there are less junior roles, right, than
Like
you used to
what
be
work
available.
specifically? What
Huh?
works?
Well, I'll say menial work and work that involves a lot of repetitive tasks. So to be more granular and more specific, for example, in audits, right? So you need attention to detail as a major soft skill, right? And there's
Right.
something we used to do called vouching. So sometimes you have to, what I say, take a spool of transactions, right? And match those transactions to the support documents for those transactions. But now you have AI tools that can do the matching very easily, very
So you
fast, right? So it has eliminated
Okay.
the need for, the junior team members to be performing such roles, right? So it means in the case wherein you had the need for 10 junior team members, you probably need probably three, two nowadays
Okay.
on that same team. Yeah.
Okay. So research could be one area because they can do it faster, right? And the matching,
Mhm.
you still need someone to double check the work, correct?
Yeah, review. Yeah. So prepare,
Right,
review,
right,
process, but you need less
right.
preparers. Yeah.
You need less preparers. Okay. So with more preparers, is it fair to say that you would have more steps, like each preparer played a role, and AI has compressed that, consolidated that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Very, very correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yep. I understand. So I have a concern with AI, and
With me.
it's more than one concern. One is we live in a society where we are working hard to make machines more human like, and we want humans to be more machine like. And I know AI, which is artificial intelligence, is not intelligent. I know that. Artificial intelligence can only understand, basically, artificial intelligence has thoughts. It doesn't think. It can only have thoughts about all the information that's available. And whatever's outside of that, it can't tell you about it. And so we are creating this culture of machines being more human and humans being more machine. And we want innovation, which is AI doesn't do that. Now AI can make improvements. It can reconfigure and look at what exists from different perspectives. I understand it's looking at cancer cures and it sees patterns faster than what
Hmm.
a human does. I
Hmm.
got that. My other concern is that in the U.S., in the west part, California, there was a gold rush.
Bless you.
So the California gold rush, most people who ran out to California to make money from gold did not succeed. Do you know who was very successful because of the California gold rush?
The transportation industry.
People who made picks and shovels,
Oh, yeah.
because thousands of people right. Thousands of people ran out there to find gold and they needed picks and shovels and they all bought picks and shovels. So people who started the pick and shovel company, became wealthy. Most of the people looking for gold did not become wealthy. So my concern is that the people who make picks and shovels for AI will be very successful and most people will not become wealthy from AI. It's too much hype and the billions of dollars that are going into it, I don't know if they are going to get the returns that are expected from that. And the true innovation will come from human beings. And if you want your humans to be more like computers, well, computers don't do things that human beings do. So you will actually end up diminishing your most valuable asset by wanting them to be more computer like. And you're expecting your computers to be more human like, and they don't have the, maybe one day it will have the capacity. I mean, if you think about it, all the resources that were needed to make the iPhone existed on planet Earth 2,000 years ago. So if we believe AI is that intelligent, hypothetically, artificial intelligence could have made the iPhone 2000 because all the resources were there. So whatever doesn't exist 2,000 years from now, AI is not creating it
I think you are very
because
much aligned with our narrative that we have in-house here. There's been a past episode of this podcast. It's titled First AI Next. And I like to think that myself, on behalf of myself and my co-host, right, we see AI from certain lenses. We see it as an amplifier. That is, it magnifies both the brilliant strategies and flawed thinking of the users and most likely, the leaders. And of course, AI as a mirror, it reflects back the quality of the questions that you ask as a leader. And
right,
of course, AI as a
right,
catalyst, it forces leaders to really find what, makes them irreplaceable. So we just see AI as a tool, right? And I love the analogy you gave, that is people that make the pixels and shovels for AI are the ones who are going to be rich So we, for example, are adopting AI in the field of PR, communication,
Okay.
media, right? So I call myself AI, but I love the fact that I'm able to use AI, to serve as a catalyst to, would I say, enhance the growth of my passion. I look at people who have been in podcasting for 5 years before me. They are lower on the global rankings. Well, okay, I bust into the scene November 2023. That's wow. I'll be 2 years, November 19 this year, right?
Okay.
And global top 2.5%. I look at the people who
Okay.
are on that same rankings. Most of them started 5 years at least. They had a 5 years head start before me. That's
Right.
looking at AI as a catalyst, right? Because we are able to know the right mix of AI tools to use and apply on our own mission. So I think we sort of align with your narrative. That is the people who apply AI to what they want to do or provide, say, complementary or support services to AI tools or AI services would be the ones that would enrich themselves in this AI gold rush. But what do you see it as being an amplifier, a mirror, and a catalyst? I love your thoughts on that.
I think it's a tool, just like Google was a tool. Or Yahoo search engines have been tools. So before the search engine was the library, and that took time. You had to go to a different location. So now you can have it in the palm of your hand. So that's more efficient. AI is just more. It has more capacity than Google because you can ask AI to do a proposal for you. You can ask AI to do all kinds of things, right? You can write a book, you can make a TV show. There's so much more you can do with AI. In fact, AI will disrupt Google. Google is being disrupted. I forget what the percentage is, but their volume has already dropped significantly, like 40%.
Wow.
Now they have Google
So
Gemini. They have
yeah, but
adopted AI. They have adopted AI. They have Gemini and they have the Google AI overview. They
right.
know what they're doing.
Right. They waited a little late. Their
Mhm.
traffic has already dropped. It's already a
Mm.
significant drop in their traffic. So they have been disrupted. It's not 10%. It's in sizable numbers,
Mhm.
noticeable.
That's very true.
So they've been disrupted already. So now they have to play catch up. So it's a great tool to help you clarify thoughts. It's a great tool in doing proposals and cutting down the amount of steps, getting rid of menial work.
Mhm.
It has its benefits. I mean, you can look at AI in the fast food industry. We have, I think it's a McDonald's. It's the first McDonald's to have no human being in the operation at all.
Huh.
Flipping burgers, everything. It's doing everything. And that would all
Hmm.
be from, large language models. That's some level of AI. And I think that's
AI
why
and
AI
robotics.
is not right, but I think that's why AI is not intelligent because it's still a large language model, large language learning model. It's not technically intelligent. Now, it's good at pattern recognition for what does exist, but connecting dots that do not exist. So when you get a highly intelligent person who can connect dots that the rest of the world doesn't see, and I prefer to talk about Nikola Tesla instead of Einstein because most people don't know Einstein didn't come up with the theory of relativity. It was a French guy back in the mid 1800s who actually wrote a paper on that already, what before Einstein. But Tesla was connecting dots that didn't exist. He was talking cell phones in the late 1800s.
One thing that
So
I
that's what. Go ahead.
One thing I just wanted to kind of connect with what you're saying is bridging something that you spoke about earlier in regard to paradigm shifting and connecting to that story, of the 4-year-old washing dishes and things like that. It's crazy that we are in a time where anybody can pick up AI and sell it as a shovel or sell it as the pickaxe. And even though it
Right.
is this tool, it really can only be used to the extent of our own belief systems. So it's just kind of crazy to think about, just to me, that the extent of the user is really um the most limited. part for sure. So if we don't even understand our own belief systems or we can't run our own thoughts, we wouldn't be able to expand AI in any way. We're just using it as a feedback loop, which almost just sounds like an extent of the current problem that we were even speaking about earlier when it comes to people not being in control of their own thoughts. So, like we just mentioned, people
Mm.
are one of the reasons people have switched over from Google to, for example, ChatGPT is because of the feedback loops that it gives and extent to the wide range of information that it has, like the vast library, if you will. But again, if we're not able to understand our own minds or push past our own paradigms, we're only seeking answers to a certain extent to our current belief. We wouldn't be able to even
Right.
reach past a point of paradigm shifting at all. Because again, we're just using it as a feedback loop based off of all the information that we currently have. But when we're
Right.
speaking about visionaries, mover shakers, the people that actually um, are bringing up ideas that were never being talked about before, they don't get those ideas or have those thoughts based off of operating against a feedback loop of information being fed to them back and forth, back and forth. This kind of leads into my next question. So, Ted, you work with, usually an older generation, maybe not always, but a lot of the CEOs, businesses, C-suite, teams and corporations that you work with, and you kind of have your own strategy, maybe your own curriculum. If you were designing a curriculum for the next generation, so if we're speaking just based off of disruptive leadership, maybe they use AI, maybe they don't. What would be your first 3 lessons, or can you expand on them when it comes to, you know, questioning everything, especially when we're talking about AI and the answers AI is giving us in this feedback loop, um, along with embracing things like discomfort, chaos, and leading with problems, starting problems, creating problems. Can you kind of explain those lessons in a way that would be beneficial to this generation coming up where AI is going to be so normalized?
Uh, so being a human hasn't changed. If it has, tell me in what way.
It has changed because humans now use AI and yeah, that's just a joke, right? But one thing that really fascinates me is the fact that I grew up in that age wherein I had to use the library coding system. You learn, all of those manual techniques for searching the books, the resources, the publications in the library. But it's crazy that information was difficult to obtain back then, and information is very easily accessible and widely available. But now I get the most stupid questions, right? Than back then. So I feel like it's like we are the age of the height of artificial intelligence, but the age of the height of human foolishness as well. So I don't know, there's a mismatch somewhere.
But it still doesn't help me understand whether human beings have changed over the past 2,000 years.
We have deteriorated. I feel like we are deteriorating as on the average, right? The quality of humans we have today is less than the quality of humans we had, say, in our grandparents' generation, the parents before them. We have people who are weaker physically and I think mentally, but that's not a scientifically proven fact. That's a conspiracy theory, but take that from me.
Well, so let's think back 100 years ago. People could have said, "Hey, we're different in 1925 because just 30 years ago, most people didn't have electricity in their home. We didn't have flying machines. Most people didn't have cars." Like they can go down a list of the technology that we can't even imagine that was so life changing to go from kerosene lit, jar
I
to
use that in
an art,
Africa. I use that in Africa.
but to having an artificial sun in your house that you can turn on and off anytime you want, right? So we can't imagine not flying and now flying. And those people would have thought that this technology has changed humans. And here we are 100 years later saying the same thing they said. So what has changed about human beings? That's what I'm not hearing from either of you. What is different about human beings today that wouldn't have happened 100 or 500 years ago. What's different about the generation that didn't exist for anyone else? Because everyone's seen technology. Go back to the
I would
We've
say
seen advancement in technology.
more so the differences may rely in cultural shifts and belief systems that have changed through, you know, any type of country, they're economically, socially, and things like that. I would say that those make a decent impact on the way humans evolve.
But
I
what's
wouldn't.
different? What specifically is different?
From one perspective, is it from like a biological perspective,
I just
psychological, like
tell me what's different about human beings today that didn't exist 100 years ago or 500 years ago or 2000 years ago.
I would say, yeah, still pretty much similar fabric, but a difference is, the social cultural fabric. So man is a social animal. When you look at it, from a sociological perspective, look at the anthropology of man, right? The social cultural practices have absolutely changed over time, right? It's difficult to observe, but when you look at spans of time, like 500 years, 100 years, right? It's the patterns are easier, but fundamentally, nothing has really changed, about man. But when you look at the social cultural practices, absolutely there has been, culture shifts, mindset shifts over time, especially with technological advancement, right? We are more reliant, on technological tools, unlike, the age of, say, the hunter gatherers, wherein man was a more ferocious animal and more acclimatized to the natural environment. But fundamentally, man is still man. So we're just looking at social cultural shifts over time.
But
That's
I
basically
don't
what I'll
know
say.
what social cultural shifts are different now that didn't exist 500 years ago
500 years ago. Say pop culture, for
or
example.
100. I mean, just
If
one
500 years ago,
generation.
I don't think there
50
was pop
years.
culture. I don't think there was pop culture. I don't think there was cancel culture. I don't think there was.
The nuclear
No, no, no,
family.
Yeah,
no. So
correct me if
500
I'm wrong.
years. So let's
Huh?
say 500 years ago, 500 years ago, you lived in a village, right? And you
Uh-huh.
were known for being dishonest. You got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
No one in the village would work with you. No
not by
one
the
in the village
media,
would cooperate with you.
not by the
No, but you
media,
would, yes,
not
yes,
on a
yes.
global
The
scale.
media, yes, the media was word of mouth globally in that
Yeah,
village.
the town
You were
criers.
canceled, right? And then the next village would have heard about you. So when you arrived, they would be ready to cancel you also.
That is why we used to have exiles. Yeah, back in the day. Yeah, so some people used to go on
I
exile.
right. So this is the same thing. We're doing the same things.
Hey.
I think it
I'm
still
just
boils back to what I said. I said fundamentally, we've not changed as a species, right? We've only seen like social cultural shifts over time, but it's not, those changes are not so, would I say, significant to say that man has changed significantly as a species, right? We are still woven from the same fabric, but there are social cultural changes over time, but the fundamentals, the primary, more like the primary colors remain the same. We're just mixing and matching the primary and secondary colors to form tertiary colors. So it's different
but you're
shades.
still
So
saying your people are still saying our generation is different from the last. That's what each generation says. So we're all saying the same thing.
I'm
And
not one of those people.
still the 5-year old is running your life, just like 500 years ago or 50 years ago
Mhm,
or 50 years from now. The 5-year old is running your life, and
mhm,
transformation becomes really valid. Like the human being, we believe that technology has changed us, and we've been saying that for a very long time, and we keep saying it, and still we have, murder and theft and abuse and all. We
mhm,
didn't take any of that out of society. Divorce is still
mhm,
there, infidelity, all these things. Like, what
mhm,
has changed? You still have to learn to walk, talk, feed yourself, learn to speak a language, count. Like, all those, the human experience. I mean, living in the jungle, I saw that. I saw people who lived way back, no electricity or running water. They had the kerosene jar. I saw that. I
The,
lived that
the
life.
stove, man. You did that? You're a legend.
An agricultural society with no machines, just a
hmm
machete
Yeah, the the
and a
the
stick.
the,
You
the
make a
we
hole.
call it the cutlass, then the hose, right? That bent one. You use it to rake, and
All
then
right.
there's the rake as well with thin iron prongs, right? You use that one to clear the leaves. If you've done that, I think the respect I have for you has gone higher.
But no, you get what I mean, everyone believes they're different. And
Mhm.
it's what it takes for human beings to come together and work together is still the same thing.
hmm
And we're
hmm
ignoring that. We're thinking that it's going to be some new it thing. This is it, and we're going to be different. But yet we're still dealing with. I work with people of all age groups, and I still see the same thing. If anything, some of those cultures they call primitive are better at being a community. We've lost the community. So do people, and we're attempting to use technology to create communities. One thing that's been interesting over the past 20 years here in the US is that the younger people have been hungry for community. So they create groups of like crocheting, like they still want that human to human contact where we sit down and we're just in a room hanging out, crocheting or doing, we put puzzles together. Like they've gone back to wanting that.
Mhm.
And when you live in villages, you have that. That's just a normal. You take it for granted.
Default
You
setting.
don't want that. It's like when I lived in the jungle, like the women, most of the young women took a bath in the river at the same time together. They washed their clothes in the river together. The men, we chopped
Bro,
down the jungle with a machete and we did it as a community. I saw that. It seems people still do want community. Even the young people, they still want that. How do you create that if technology is dividing you, not just for like political or other reasons? It's dividing you because you don't have to leave your house. You can sit in the house all day and never have any contact with another human being, but they still crave that other human being.
Noella, can you please send this man some flowers tomorrow? Because he literally hit the nail on the head. He hit the nail on the head. And I think you were able to describe something that I think I was unable to describe earlier, in this session. That sense of community, right?
Right.
And I feel like maybe I sort of misconstrued it for happiness. But if you remember, I was trying to explain that, there's a better sense of
Right.
community in less developed, areas of the world. And
Right.
for me, I was privileged growing up in Africa, privileged growing up in, environments wherein there is community. And I think I've had this conversation with Noella before. Like when I came to the United Kingdom and I look at certain people who try to act like, oh, they are gangsters. I tell them where I come from, we eat where I come from, we eat gangsters for breakfast. Like, don't even try me. Like, you don't want to know what I've seen in my lifetime. You know, killing animals, right? Barehanded, right? With machetes,
Right.
right? With sticks and
Right.
stuff like that, right? Like facing dangerous snakes, right? So there are certain things you go through in life, right? When you face dangerous animals, you've killed dangerous animals, little things. There are, would I say, less things in life that would scare you, right? And then you've had
Exactly.
to also deal with dangerous human beings as well. As much as you have dangerous lower animals, you have dangerous higher animals as well, right?
Right.
And you dealt with all of that, right? And you left that environment to a more technologically driven environment. And the people there think because they have more technology that they are more dangerous. And then you just look at them like, excuse me, excuse me, right? But in that less technologically driven environment, you have a better sense of community, right? And you have
Right.
these people who are trying to use technology to create a false sense of community. And you
Correct.
just don't know how to explain it to them that you can never get it. This is not what community is about, right?
Exactly.
Community is about authenticity, genuine connection, connecting the dots, right? By
On a
not,
daily basis, every
yeah, and
day.
and not by intentional effort, right? But because,
Right.
yeah, like would I say nature or the universe just puts you together, right? And you are forced sort of to cooperate.
And you know everyone in your village. And the
hmm
cooperation is a big part of your own
Yeah,
survival.
yeah.
And not cooperating could have you canceled.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you have the vigilantes, right? the vigilante groups that guard in the night?
Okay. No, no.
Or
Well,
you don't have
actually,
those?
no, no. Let me tell you. So I went to two different villages. I think I told you guys about the
Now,
village
now,
that
now I
had.
want to hear your experience in those villages.
No, but I think I told you in the last one about the village that. So
Mm-hmm,
I lived most of my time in a village with 329 people. There was another village with 500 something,
mm-hmm,
and the 500 something had gotten electricity 30 days before I arrived. So
mm-hmm,
I told you guys this story already, right?
mm-hmm.
No or yes?
You did, but you did not talk about like the social fabric in detail. So, for example, no police, no armed forces,
Right.
but
Exactly.
there's
Exactly.
regulation. So how come?
Right. So because they had television, the young guys, like older teenagers, early 20s, they
Mm-hmm,
saw the Bloods and Crips on television, and they
mm-hmm,
decided they wanted to be tough guys and be Bloods and Crips. They were spray painting in different areas, and they were bullying the women, some of the younger women in the village. So the elders called a town hall meeting and said,
mm-hmm,
"Hey, the parents of the young guys who are bullying people, you know who your sons are. We're not going to point fingers, but here's
mm-hmm.
what's going to happen." And and just like you said, they never called the police for this. It
I
was
you
self-regulated. The
self.
elders called a town hall meeting and said, "Here's what's going to happen. If you don't stop your sons from bullying people, you will
Mm-hmm,
find them in the jungle with no life.
exactly.
So it's up to you. Either you stop them or we stop them." And the parents stopped their sons. And they never called the police. They never complained. It was how a self-contained village that
Mm-hmm,
it had a way of managing chaos that was
mm-hmm.
about to bring damage to people. And so
Escalate.
the leadership of which or people look to the elders had a way of managing that chaos that was in the best interest of the whole, and those guys
Exactly.
being bullies was not in the best interest of the whole.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
that's a community. You have
That's a proper
extremely low
community.
divorce rates. You have
Mm-hmm,
you have community where the community has a say in how things happen there, not
exactly.
people on the outside looking to save you.
Mm-hmm,
That's a very different world, and I've had people say, "Oh, we have community here," and it's like, Adamola, you understand what I'm talking about because you lived it. That was normal life. You literally know every single person in the village, and when a new person is
yeah,
born, you know who it is.
yeah,
And
exactly.
at the end of a day's work,
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of walk and you go to someone's house and you talk. You don't have a television. You have
Organic
human
conversations.
beings. Right. You have human beings and you know everyone and you
Mm-hmm.
know what's going on. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a self-regulated community where the people in the community care so
Mm-hmm.
much that
Mm-hmm.
everything that happens there affects everyone.
Yes. Like, but I don't know. The Western world can never get it. They can never understand it. It's
Well,
also okay.
it becomes it doesn't even matter because the same thing happens in corporations. So in the military, once you get beyond like 225 people, becomes more difficult to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And they found the same thing in corporations. Once you get beyond 200 something people, it becomes a different animal. For that,
Mm-hmm.
with 200 people, the CEO knows everyone in the company by first name. They may even know who
Mm-hmm.
your spouse is and your children. But
Mm-hmm.
when you get to
Mm-hmm.
500 people, it's a lot of people and it becomes more difficult to manage. When you look at that in a society, maybe the benefit is to have villages that only have a certain amount of people. And once you get to a certain point, the village splits off. And that
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's what happened and how we were able to have all these villages all over the place because it became more difficult. You start losing a sense of community
Mm-hmm.
if you get beyond a certain number and you break
Mm-hmm.
off and go start a new village in a
Mm-hmm.
different location, but it's not far away, but you're related to everyone in the last village. And so maybe we have mega cities with millions of people. And so it's difficult to have that. Even in New York, you have sections like Gramercy Park and the Village and Hell's Kitchen. You have these, and maybe those sections had more value like 70 years ago. Like everyone who lived in a section called Hell's Kitchen knew like everyone. But then as the city kept growing, you kind of don't know people because like my grandfather can say, we just didn't go into other neighborhoods. We didn't know those people. They didn't know us, and we didn't belong there. So it was almost like villages within a city. But we've outgrown that, and we have no way of bringing that. We have no way of creating structures. At least we haven't. Maybe we'll be depending on AI to do that. But the point also to the original question, which shows that human beings are still the same. So the younger generation will still want community, and they still have the 5-year-old running their life, and they're still like the guy who was 62 in the mortgage industry who had the 13-year-old running his life. And he's a great example of, you were saying, Adamola, that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, how old is too old? This guy was 62, and he was able to have a breakthrough. And so it doesn't matter what your age is. Like, transformation is transformation, transforming the whatever it means to be a human being and having possibilities beyond the limits of what you were given to be a human. And that's for any age, because you're still going to have, as I said, the 5-year-old making decisions in your life, and you don't even know that you don't know that.
I
Age is just
actually
a
love
number.
what you're saying right now, because right now we're talking about what do we have to say to the next generation. And like you're saying, each new generation that comes up, the younger people, they're constantly told, oh, you're different. Oh, you're different. Oh, you're different. Oh, this is whatever.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Culturally, a lot of times, depending on where you're at, the leading generation, or the generation that, should be guiding them, actually says, oh, these kids are doomed. Oh, these kids are doomed. Oh, whatever, whatever. And then the kids themselves actually accept that, and they're like, yep, we're absolutely screwed. You know what I mean? But the thing is, specifically in AI right now, there's so much on social media and in business saying, if you're a young kid, take advantage of AI and you're going to become a millionaire, a billionaire, yada, 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 XYZ. And I just love what we're talking about, because it really shows and brings so much light, again, to really the belief system. It doesn't matter what age you are. So if we have a 21-year-old who is on Instagram and all they're hearing all day is take advantage of AI, pick up a shovel, sell a shovel,
Right.
Whatever, they're like, could be petrified and saying, if I don't do something, or if I don't do something right now, I'm screwed for the rest of my life,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And who even knows the type of beliefs that the teenagers, or, the kids, the teenagers, the young adults, who knows what paradigms or inner belief systems they even have to discover, face, and put aside to even get to a point where they could implement any type of business. So we just love to hear it on this
Right.
podcast to encourage, obviously, anyone of any age. It doesn't just encourage the older people as well, but it reminds the younger people that, things like paradigm shifting and building these types of successes and going through chaos, it's not a race. It's not a race. And again, it just reminds me of that story, the story of running with broken legs that you witnessed in your childhood, reminding me of that
Right. Right.
that story could really come about, like a similar story could come about when someone's when they're 4, 5, 6, like you were when you're very young, or it could come when you're 13, or when you're 35,
Right.
or when you're 70, right? We don't
Right.
know when that's going to come in
Right.
somebody's life, but no matter when it does, not being scared and, moving forward, having a massive vision for your life, and also knowing that even as things change around us, we are all still connected. We all can still have community, and that we have the ability to move through the paradigms and move forward with or without AI, because we have that intrinsic ability given to us as humans, is really the point of the matter.
Right.
So just wanted to connect those points
Exactly.
just from hearing your expertise. Again, I love hearing you guys talk. It's such a pleasure having you on this podcast right now. We just have one more small segment, or one more question, and then we're going to do a quick fire round. So I'm going to share the
Okay.
last question for us, and then we're going to have Adamola go into the quick fire round.
Adamola, you know about the tulip craze in Holland, right?
Yeah, Chile plays in Holland, Netherlands, right?
Right. Right. It was just a bubble. We had the dot-com bubble, automobiles had a bubble, the telecommunications industry had a bubble. There have been so many bubbles, and everyone thinks they're different, yet we still have these bubbles. AI is
Yeah,
probably going to be another bubble.
it is another bubble. Actually, it is another bubble. So that's why, like on our side, we just try to take advantage of the tools that we can, right? While
Right.
the bubble still lasts, because really we are millennials. Myself and Noella were born in the same year. I was just joking with her, saying that she's so passionate about the next generation that sometimes I forget we were born in the same year, right? So, like as a millennial, you've seen a lot of technological shift,
Right,
and
right,
I feel like I have seen more technological shift than Noella. Why? Because I was born in, a third world country. So like
right,
the third world countries are sort of behind technologically, right? So we were using technology that Noella was not privileged to have used because we were like, playing, would I say we are behind? If you're born in a third world country, you're not starting from point zero. You're starting from maybe minus 10, right?
right.
So yeah, so we use technology that, we now had to start up playing catch up. And like I've had to play a lot of catch up in my life, and now catching up with AI and all this stuff. I feel like it's like a crash course when you have seen that cycle over and
Right.
over and over and over again. You just know this is a repetitive pattern, right? And you just have to take what you can take, while it lasts, because
Oh,
it's
sure.
it's not
Absolutely.
around. It's not around for too long. It's just another bubble.
In the early 1920s, in the US alone, there were more than 100 automobile manufacturers.
Mm.
Most people can't imagine that. Over
It's crazy.
100 companies making automobiles.
A lot of them in Detroit. I know Detroit
Yes,
was a
most
hub.
likely. Yeah, it was a lot were in Detroit. But most of them disappeared, and when the dust settled, you had, maybe 5. And so
Yeah.
same with the dot-com bubble burst, same thing. Most disappeared and dust settles and you have just a handful.
Yeah,
So,
we had .com, we had crypto, we had which ones have we had in recent time? I know
That's
crypto
a
is a
really
very big one.
interesting comparison. It's a really interesting comparison to kind of think about this AI bubble and compare it to the automobile industry. And just say that just because of my personal experience. So I live in Michigan and I am from
Who better?
the hub of General Motors. So, or what was General Motors, what used to be
okay.
General Motors, right? And so just
Wow.
understanding how it has impacted so many different cities across the country. And then as soon as the bubble popped, watching those cities deal with that dust
Right,
settling,
exactly.
some struggling still to this day, struggling to come back. It's very interesting to kind of take that into consideration, AI being the same way, noticing possibly trends in certain cities, certain tech-centric cities, maybe even, when we think about cities that run with tech right now, we think about, Seattle, we think about San
Silicon Valley.
Francisco, we think about
Right, right,
cities like that. It's kind of
right,
really,
right.
really, that's very interesting to, I don't know, it just makes me wonder how they will be impacted
Yo,
if it does get to a point where bubble bursts, dust settles, and how the actual cities that are built on AI right now will be impacted later on. I don't know, that's just really, really interesting to me. Hello?
Yes, are you familiar with the tulip craze in Holland?
I am not, unfortunately. I'm on.
Okay. You I
Hello?
don't know what's going
it's,
on.
it's talking about it, the tulip craze. They call it tulip mania. In Netherlands.
Yeah, I'm actually not familiar with that.
I
No.
think she knows, maybe not. No, you don't know? No?
I am closer to Netherlands than she is.
Okay. So it was a bubble. And
Mm.
in Holland, someone grew tulips and they sold them. And people really loved the tulips. So the price of tulips went up a lot. And then when the price went up, people were like, oh, wow, you can get rich selling tulips. And then someone came up with a great idea of making tulips in different colors. And the price went up even more because they were rare. And you can get rich selling tulips. At some point, the price of one tulip was equivalent to an average size house in the Netherlands. That's how expensive they became. And so you could become so rich selling tulips that so many people began selling tulips, there was no one to buy them. So the bubble burst. So it was a bubble. It was a tulip. They call it tulip craze, but it was a tulip. It was a bubble. And so, to my knowledge, that's one of the first documented bubbles. And so we watch bubbles happen in different industries over and over. Stock market bubbles. We get all kinds of bubbles. So this has happened. So the future generation that says, well, we're different because we have a bubble, it's like, well, no. I can tell you about plenty of bubbles that have happened. In the late 1800s, there were thousands of telecommunication companies for cell phone service. So it was a bubble. It burst. And who came out? The Bell companies, AT&T, which was part of the Bell companies originally. So there've been lots of bubbles. This
How
has
about
happened.
Bernie Madoff in your neck of the woods? Bernie Madoff with your money.
Yeah, he did. That's the pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ponzi scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Ponzi, I forget who. It's really named after a real person who
An
ran
Italian
the
guy.
Ponzi scheme. Yeah. So this generation is still dealing with Ponzi schemes and bubbles
Oh,
and
100%.
wanting community.
100%. Yeah.
The Ponzi schemes are really, really interesting. Like, it is crazy. It is crazy. Like, Ponzi schemes. It's interesting how people keep falling for them all the time. When there's
And
there's
but doesn't that
documented
prove
history.
that each generation is the same as the last?
Exactly what I said, right?
All right. So we've got one last question, then we're going to do a quick fire round.
Okay.
To any rising leader and they're afraid to run headfirst into chaos in an organization, or they are resistant to change, or they're scared of change, or they think change is too hard and they kind of put those blind spots on themselves, what would you say to that person?
Call me and I'll offer you a free 30-minute session, and we'll see if there's any way I can support you in getting there.
Absolutely. Asking, might as well direct their problem to the best in the business on that. All right, so let's end it with a quick fire round. Again, Ted, just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, your patience, your expertise, your wisdom, just everything you've given us and our audience and people who haven't met you yet, people that don't understand these concepts yet, people that are looking for wisdom in a feedback loop. Just thank you again for your time. So, Adamola, go ahead.
Okay, I think I've tried so much to nimble the chaos that has been in my head. Of course, I have been holding the surprise for you, Ted. I
Okay.
didn't say I had a surprise, but I have been keeping the cat in the bag. It's time to let the cat out of the bag. So, a couple of surprises. Yeah, maybe just one. You are highly, highly appreciated by us, and I have made sure that this second episode with you is actually a milestone episode. So you have the honor of being
Thank you.
episode 100 and the King Dems Podcast. Ted Santos! Make some noise for Ted Santos.
150. Yeah.
150. I think that's a very, very big milestone. And I'm grateful that this started 2 years ago as a passion project. And of course, we're recording this a day before my mother's birthday, because I remember I started 7 days after my mother's birthday 2 years ago, November 19, 2023. And we're grateful. We're global top 2.5%. And the goal is to be in the global top 1%. So I have just one request from yourself, Anuela. Please say a word of prayer and a birthday wish for my mother, because I am going to publish this episode on my mother's birthday. So there you go.
So
Who's going to go first?
happy birthday to Adamola's mother, because he didn't tell us your name, so we can only call you Adamola's mother.
Okay,
Happy birthday!
Her name is Bridget. AB.
Bridget!
Yeah, AB, the mother of AI.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Bridget.
birthday, Bridget. Happy and
Much
many,
love
many more.
to Bridget on her birthday.
Love and
And
respect.
I assume your mother's not 115 years old. If she was, I'd say she's still a young woman.
She's less than 70, so yeah, so she's still young.
Okay.
She's still
Even
young enough to
younger.
have a
She's
paradigm shift.
no question.
No question about
Even
that.
even if she was 115, she could still have a paradigm shift.
Yeah. Age is just a number. Age is just a number. So yeah, once again, I'm really grateful to you, and yeah, I always make sure that every episode, every milestone episode has been somebody that I deeply connect with and deeply appreciate their body of work and their
Mm.
personality. So I'm somebody who's very good at separating the art from the artist. Or for a milestone
Okay.
episode, I need to appreciate the art and the artist, and
Mm.
who better than Ted Santos. I know this
appreciate
is
it.
coming as a surprise to Noella, because like I deliberately had to publish another episode to make it 149, so that Ted Santos's episode is gonna be 150.
Very
So
cool.
so now you know the reason why I published an old episode. And I
Very
hope I've
cool.
been able to keep this surprise really, confidential. So thank you very much once again. We appreciate you very, very much on this platform. And let's get ready to rumble the quick fire round questions.
Let's
Uh,
let's
who's
do
gonna
it.
go first? Okay. Quick fire round. Okay, what's one morning habit that fuels your clarity?
Well, I don't have any habits, at least. Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
habit is no habit.
I know this is a quick fire round, so just think of it this way. If you play a sport, the team comes together to do what? They go to every day. They go to
Train.
right. What
Mm,
else? What's another word?
Practice.
Exactly. They don't come together to do habits. They come together to practice. They
mm,
practice to be powerful and very effective at what they do.
mm,
People don't understand the power of language. When you say I have this habit, do you smoke? Do you drink? What are you doing that's a habit? Habits are generally things people want to get rid of.
Mm.
Practices are things that make you powerful and very effective at what you do.
mm.
So, what's your
Another
morning
another
practice that
language
fuels
shit.
your clarity?
I like that. The best in the world are the best in the world for a reason. To be the best, you have to beat the best, and the best is blessed, and the best is Noella.
I have no practice. I eat breakfast every day, but to have
Okay.
clarity, that really has nothing to do with clarity. Clarity is a bigger commitment that has nothing to do with each day. It's being that person.
And what's one word that defines leadership today?
It would have to be a hyphenated short term.
Interesting. What's the most disruptive invention of the last decade?
Perhaps, well, you know what? I'll say the Webb telescope, because it's time that scientists and astronomers are disrupted in their belief about how they see the universe. They've been saying, "Oh, it's about 13.8 billion years old," and I don't know anyone who's lived that long to be able to tell me it's that old. So I don't know. And I've heard all the scientific reasons and how they extrapolate, but what the Webb telescope has allowed them to do is see universes that they've never seen, and they're seeing that they are much older. So it's going to alter the way they see the universe and the world. So we give a number of 13.8 billion based on the known universe. There's so much that we don't know. So it's difficult for me to see how they can even see the earth is 4 billion or 13 or 20 billion or a trillion years old. We don't even know what's in the earth, but the Hubble telescope is helping us better understand the age and some of the other dynamics happening in the universe about things that we just didn't know. So in the past decade, they've put the Webb telescope up into space.
So, who is one mentor that has changed your trajectory?
Ted Santos just answered the question.
And
Oh,
if you're able to finish it in a different way than this previous question um asked about leadership, finish this sentence. Leadership is
The
blank.
future. The future.
The future. Wonderful. Awesome. Well, that closes out
wow.
our quick fire round. Again, just want to thank you endlessly for your expertise and your time. We really appreciate it.
No, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. It's been an honor to be invited back a second time, especially as it hasn't been a long time since the first one. So Thank you.
Love, and of course, absolute respect to you. Words are insufficient or inadequate to express how much we appreciate you. And maybe I need a paradigm shift to be able to acquire the knowledge of the language to express my appreciation for you. But in the meantime, while I'm still in this lower paradigm, I say a very, very big thank you. And of course, from me to you, God bless you. And to the audience, guys, always go for something in your lives, conceive, believe, strive to thrive, and of course achieve. Very, very important. Always believe in yourself, and of course, keep working towards your goals. Never say never. Never let anybody pull you down or talk you down. Nobody has the right to tell you who you are. Yeah, always go for what you believe. And of course, if you're in doubt, if you need some coaching or training, please learn from the best. Don't say we've not helped you. And of course, it's goodbye. So, how does artificial intelligence fit into your philosophy of disruption? Is it a tool? Is it a threat? Is it a mirror? Is it an amplifier? And what brilliant strategies can leaders or leadership in this age and time, adopt using artificial intelligence to achieve progress for their teams, their organizations, and of course, in their personal lives?